Coming up on This Week in Google, I, Mikah Sargent, am subbing in for Leo Laporte, and I am joined by Paris Martineau and Jeff Jarvis. We start out by talking about how Slorg burnt Slerf, although Slorg didn't technically burn Slerf, but anyway, you'll understand when you watch the episode. We talk about OpenAI and what we can expect from a new version of its GPT, plus Google getting hit with a fine in France for reading with its AI systems. That, of course, sparks a heated conversation between Jeff Jarvis and Paris Martineau about what it means if a machine is doing the reading versus a human. Then we talk about nVidia's recent conference, what we should care about there, what we shouldn't, and if you can believe it, we spent a lot of time talking about Dungeons and Dragons. It's all of that, plus so much more, coming up on This Week in Google. This episode is brought to you by Zscaler, the leader in cloud security. Cyber attackers are using AI in creative ways to compromise users and breach organizations. In a security landscape where you must fight AI with AI, the best AI protection comes from having the best data. Zscaler has extended its zero-trust architecture with powerful AI engines that are trained and tuned by 500 trillion daily signals. Learn more about Zscaler Zero Trust plus AI to prevent ransomware and AI attacks. Experience your world secured. Visit zscaler.com/zerotrustai.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is This Week in Google with Paris Martineau, Jeff Jarvis, and this week, Mikah Sargent, episode 760, recorded Wednesday, March 20th, 2024, The Ground State of a Molecule. This episode of This Week in Google is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did you know nearly 75% of people have subscriptions they've forgotten about? Well, that was the case for me. When I started using Rocket Money, I couldn't believe how many subscriptions I was paying for each month between streaming services, fitness apps, and delivery service. It's never ending. Thanks to Rocket Money, I'm no longer wasting money on the ones I forgot about. It was really nice to have this little bit of information that says, look, you are paying way too much because turns out you have two of the same streaming service. What? How did I do that? I was able to cancel one of those and save some money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. I can see all of my subscriptions in one place, and if I see something I don't want, Rocket Money can actually help me cancel it with a few taps. They'll deal with the customer service for you. Rocket Money has more than 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/twig. That's rocketmoney.com/twig. Don't forget rocketmoney.com/twig. It's time for This Week in Google, otherwise known lovingly as Twig, the show where we almost never really talk about Google. I am your host for a little bit, Mikah Sargent, just today, actually, subbing in for Leo Laporte, who is on vacation. Joining me across the internet is last week's host. It's Paris Martineau. Hello, Paris.
Yay, Paris.
Love to pass the baton.
You did a fantastic job last week, and we thank you very much for your work there. It was a great show, and I am honored and very happy to be joining you this week. Also joining us is the Leonard Tao Professor for Journalistic Innovation at the Craig Newmark Graduate School. There it is.
I'm Craig
School of Journalism at the City University of New York, and the director of the Tao Knight Center for Entrepreneurial Journalism at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. It's Jeff Jarvis. Hello, Jeff.
Hello there. I had to email Craig about something today, and I said, I've got to do my vocal lessons right now to warm up for singing your name, Craig. I'm glad we've tried Paris. I'm very happy that you made this into a duet. Thank you.
Of course, I have to participate. I can't leave you out there all by your lonesome.
Yeah,
we should try to figure out the
I was going to say the lack
We
of
should do some
sync
harmonies,
is what
yeah.
really makes it work for me. It's sort of coming in at two different. It's just, what are the
completely both not
phasing.
synced with the Craig Newmark audio. Importantly. We've got
let's try it
three
again.
completely different.
Can we do it again? Let's try and do it
We're
again.
not going to be able to get it. We're on a Zoom
No, but
call.
we're going to
Jeff.
rehearse here. We're going to rehearse one more time. Craig Newmark.
Hey, the Newmark. The Newmark was almost
There we
perfect.
go.
Newmark choir.
That's pretty good. This is the show where we talk about a lot of stuff, and it is always a hootin' good time.
that is a description for this show. Yeah.
One of many descriptions I've heard for this show, at least. You know what? I don't want to start with me this week. I would like for one of you to suggest the first topic. Is there something that is, well, it looks like you might be saying Paris.
Madame.
Paris,
Madame.
is there something that you're just really pumped to be talking about? Or maybe
Listen,
you're the
all
opposite?
of my answers to this question are going to be the silliest thing in the world. So I'd like you to look within yourself to want to know if that's where you want to bring the show immediately.
Let's go silly. Why not?
We've got a section at the bottom of the changelog called Paris's Brain is Hanging On by a Thread, which you can peruse. Let's see. There is something, I don't know if either of you guys subscribe to Matt Levine's column. It's fantastic. It's called Money Stuff. It's by Bloomberg. And it usually has kind of a pithy, fun little headline that refers to one of the various news items he talks about this week. This week, or I guess perhaps yesterday, the title of his column was Slorg is Sorry He Burnt Slerf. Do either of you guys understand that at all, first of all?
No. Is this a reference to something?
It is. The headline has since changed, as you may notice while clicking on this.
But no clearer.
It gets no clearer. It has to do with basically a cryptocurrency issue where, a cryptocurrency called Slorf, I believe. Slurf may have, let me find it actually here. Slurf. A new Solana-based meme coin, Slurf, has faced significant challenges after the project's developer accidentally burnt a major portion of the token supply, effectively losing 10 million, or the entirety of the pre-sale participants' money. Guys, I effed up, the project's official X account wrote. I burnt the LP and the tokens that were set aside for the airdrop. I am so effing sorry. The Slurf team later went on to a Twitter Spaces to elaborate further on the situation. I'm sick to my stomach, developer Slurf Soul said. The issue comes in here is the Matt Levine title of Slorf is sorry he burnt Slurf is because the original version of this newsletter attributed one of the quotes to a Slurf employee, a developer named Slorf or Slorg.
We asked for it. Mika,
yes,
you
guys asked for a silly thing.
We did.
This is the world we're living in.
This is all our fault.
So after this newsletter went out, if you click on the tweet that I've linked in the rundown, there is a Twitter context pop-up, and it says, Slorg is not the person who said any of the things that Mr. Levine is claiming, nor is he on the Slurf team. Slorg was a panelist on the Spaces, representing Soul Incinator. And so all the comments are like, Slorg saying, bro, why are you using my name for this? I had nothing to do with this token other than the dude using this thing to burn the tokens on. And they had to issue a correction, which is now at the bottom of that column, which is perhaps my favorite correction of all time, which says, corrects headline in 20th paragraph to clarify that Slorg did not burn Slurf. So that's where my head's been this week.
Woof.
This is always all just so stupid. I don't understand how anybody at all ever spends any amount of money on any of this. Is it genuinely just a hope that it's going to get anywhere near the value that Bitcoin originally did? Why do people keep doing this?
people love people have been falling for get rich quick schemes since like the beginning of time.
Fair enough.
Everyone believes that they're a special little boy or girl and that their time in the sun is coming, and that if only they just had the right combination of ideas or magic words to say that they'd be able to get rich too. And I feel like cryptocurrency has been particularly adept at swindling people along these lines. They think, oh, if you put all of your money into Slurf, you'll be a millionaire.
Because
All
I'm
you
a
need to
special
know
little
is-
slorg or slurf, so I should obviously get.
True.
So Sherrod Brown's opponent now is the Trump endorsed candidate in Ohio, who's a former car salesman, who's now a Bitcoin entrepreneur. That's all you need to know. Those 3 facts about this
boy.
person.
I never, I just, and I thought it was only NFTs that were this bad in terms of the
crypto's
stupid
all
names. I didn't realize that crypto had also gotten into the stupid name category. Like, is it not enough? Oh, I'm sorry. If someone came to my door 30 years ago and they were carrying behind them a bunch of Tupperware containers or Avon products. Maybe I should give it a fake name and so Avon doesn't get mad at me. Avos products. And they said, hi, my name is Slorg from Avos, and I want you to buy this package of Avos products and sell it to people. But also, while you're selling it to people, you might also want to tell your friends that they too should sell Avos products. I'm not going to tell Slorg yes because their name is Slorg. Like, it's all these people that aren't real people and they don't have actual faces online, and you're buying things from a sloth named Slorg. Why would you do that?
But Mikah, what you don't understand is the dog with hat currency might be able to purchase an ad on the Las Vegas skier. So that's huge.
I don't.
The sadness in your eyes over just that
The
second.
world is so
really,
broken.
I wish I could bottle that.
The world is so broken.
What's even worse is that the same people who are doing this stupid stuff are now in charge of AI, and they think they can destroy the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. Slorg is probably. Oh, I should leave Slorg alone because Slorg
Sorry,
is not
leave
responsible, right?
Slorg
Yeah,
is
Slorg,
unrelated
you're
to
gonna
this. This is
find
the
out.
Slurf community.
Sorry, the Slurf
that we need to be mad at.
The Slurfs, the Slurfazoids are probably the same people out there who are talking about prompt engineering and selling you their PDF that you can only buy with dog whiff hat coins.
Dog whiff hat.
Dog
The
whiff
F is very important.
Dog
it's
whiff.
not whiff.
Oh, it's like dog whiff hat, like a dog wearing a hat, not a dog sniffing a hat, or a hat that helps to provide whiffing for the dog. Because I was picturing more like a hat that helps you whiff things. Anyway,
You're overthinking this,
that
Mikah.
would
You
be
are
too complicated
overthinking
for
this.
quick, Joe, generate a dog hat that lets you whiff things. Anyway, my point is they're the same ones with the AI prompt engineering, which is a great segue away from this topic that's breaking my heart into something about how AI prompt engineering is dead. Long live AI prompt engineering. From you, Jeff Jarvis.
Oh, that one. I didn't read the whole thing.
Oh, well, darn it. Headline
it's long.
55.
It's long. I put it in there. You caught me. Line 55. Thank you. Where the hell are you? Everybody thinks that prompt engineering is the skill du jour, that everybody's going to do it. And so this story says that, no, this is kind of stupid and absurd. On the other hand, yes, we need to do it. The point is, as I read the beginning of it, that's all I read, is that that basically the machine can do a better job of prompting than we can. So the job we thought we had to prompt isn't the job we thought we had.
Yeah, I can, like, hands down, I can anecdotally, I guess, say this is true because here's how I've seen this play out. If I go to OpenAI's website and I go to DALL-E and I type in a hat that helps you take whiffs of scents, it's going to generate something that looks very, very stupid and bad. And if I instead go to ChatGPT and I type in, give me an image of that very same thing, what ChatGPT does behind the scenes is it properly engineers a prompt purpose-built to get the best outcome out of DALL-E.
Right.
And then I
right.
get an image that looks fan-stinkin-tastic. So
the nut
I've
graph
seen
in this
play out.
piece is that new research suggests that prompt engineering is best done by the model itself, not by a human engineer. This is cast doubt on prompt engineering's future, which is only 3 months old, this job title, and increased suspicions that a fair portion of prompt engineering jobs may be a passing fad, at least as the field is currently imagined. Nonetheless, there is a growing skill set in learning how to ask the machine what you want. However, if the machine, I think your other point, Mikah, is that the smarter the machine gets at figuring out what you want, the less smart you have to be in asking what you want.
Yes, and I think
It'll try for you.
It's still, I think that it's maybe not as, because it used to be, for example, that if you were using, what is it called, Midjourney on Discord, that was a time where you needed to type in 15,000 different words to get exactly what you were looking for to make it look exactly as you needed to. But yes, we've quickly realized that you don't need to necessarily, that's what I want from this. And I think that that's what they're trying to create from this, is that I don't need to figure out how to speak in its language, that instead,
that's the whole point.
Yeah, it should be doing what, because I have prompt engineering for Siri that I train people on, right? I have prompt engineering for Amazon's Alexa that I train people on. Oh, why is it not giving that result? Well, you have to say it like this. No, we shouldn't have to do that. We should be able to say it however we want to. It should understand what dog whiff hat is whenever we're talking about it, which I didn't understand, but that's what it's there for. So yeah.
we have a new job title. See, it's whiff hat. It's not whiff.
Yeah, it's very important.
Together with, right?
Yeah, but
whiff.
it's like with, but you can't say th, so you say whiff.
Whiff. Yeah,
it's like a child.
Because it's a dog.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's wearing a hat, so it's a dog with a hat.
You are overthinking again, sir. Overthinking again. Right. So there's a new job title which I had not heard before. Rather than prompt engineer, it's LLM engineer, LLM ops engineer, which is what we're calling prompt engineers today. So you just give it a new title and you still have your job.
Large language model ops. What is the ops?
It includes prompt engineering, but it's more about where is it? It's in the life cycle. It also entails other tasks needed to deploy the product. So it's product development with LLMs. I mean, Leo of 9 months ago, I think it's about that time, Paris, right? Would have said,
I was trying to find the original Turning Point episode and was having a hard time of it. So if anybody remembers
these guys have databases. They can find it. They're like Howard Stern. They can find it all. But there was a time when Leo would say, "This is a passing fad. This is going to be gone. That's that." And then at the turning point, he suddenly said, "No, it's the future. I have walked."
Yes, I've taken the steps on the sand, and
maybe it's Suleiman he walked with. I don't know.
Maybe
could be. Who knows?
Maybe that's who he's on vacation with in Cabo.
Did you know that there was
maybe Lisa's just a front?
Wait, maybe this joke has already been made. Was there a footsteps in the sand joke already?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
When there was only one pair of footsteps, the AI was carrying him, is what I was imagining. Anyway.
What was we invented a new metric on when we did the nVidia, right? It was how many Leos?
How many Leos are in a thing? No, how many Leos something? So they were talking.
Take a step back here.
Yeah, they were talking about these towers that are in these server rooms that have all of these cool new nVidia GPUs inside, and he decided to use a carbon fiber vehicle. I'm bad with cars, so I don't remember which vehicle it was, but a carbon fiber vehicle as the metric for weight for this item, which means absolutely nothing to me at all whatsoever.
And he admitted it meant nothing. He didn't even know how much it weighs.
Yeah. And so I looked at one of my favorite things to do is go to, and of course now I'm forgetting the name, Wolfram Alpha, and just type in any weight at any time. And what Wolfram Alpha will do is give you a comparison to something in real life. So and it doesn't have to just be weight, it could be a length. So if you say, 30 feet, that's equal to how many giraffes? So 120 pounds is equal to about 3/4 of the average adult American female, or 0.88 the global average mass of an adult human. And we found out it was about, I think we determined it was 1.5 dairy cows was how much this tower weighed. And then
That's a measurement I need.
and then Jeff said, I wonder how many Leos that is. And so I used the average adult American male metric as Leos, and therefore we could sort of sub Leo in. So 0.88.
Okay, how tall is Leo, though, and how tall is the average American man?
I think we are going way off topic. Is that what this
Wow,
show's about?
here you are trying to rein in the show.
Yeah, jeez. How cheeky of you.
Last week we talked about Kara Swisher for an hour and a half.
I'm being told 5'8" is the average height of an American male. Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's move on. So now you're not an AI prompt engineer. You're a
Lmops.
Why do we have to give it a
Lmops?
stupid name?
Lmops.
And what does it mean? Does it mean that you understand how these interact with one another, and so you're better at kind of jumping between them or something? Because I can understand.
I think it goes back to the inflection discussion too. I think there's a what we used to call it in my day was systems integrator.
Yeah.
Right. You take, we'll buy those IBM machines and we'll figure out how to make them work with the software we have in our operation. And so now these things are productized enough that you're taking something and you have to adapt it. The raw model will not do what you want. You have to do things with it. You have to give it data. You have to do other things. I guess that's what it is. So maybe it's fancy dancy prompt engineering. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I think any number of people who both watch this show and are on the show could very easily be Lmops, is what I'm saying. I think that.
Yes, I think so too.
But I mean, that's the whole point, right? It's all scammy, whammy kind of.
Well, in journalism, in the media industry, we've gone crazy trying to pattern ourselves after Google, where we heard product is everything. If you're not product, you're nothing. So now the hot job in journalism is product. Product development and audience development. Oh, yeah. In organizations.
Yes. Yeah.
Audience development, also product, where you're going to make the Times food app, and you're going to work with marketing and technology and everybody else, but you're kind of the hub.
You're
making
going to
it all
discover
happen.
the next connections.
Right.
The New York Times game out.
So we, at my school, my former school, for which I am deorbiting, we helped start the an international association of product people. And so it's a very big thing. Very big.
Yep.
All right, let's
News
move on.
Product Alliance. NUPA.
Nupa. Oompa, Nupa, Doopity-doo. Where do we want to go next? Let's talk about.
I was just saying, I thought it was kind of interesting that this week there was news about prosecutors are seeking kind of a 50-year sentence for Sam Bankman-Fried, and his legal team came out swinging. I'm on also line 89. His legal team came out swinging, saying that was a sentence only suitable for, quote, a supervillain. Sam Bankman-Fried has said U.S. prosecutors' proposal to put him in prison for as long as 50 years, quote, distorts reality and paints him as a, quote, depraved supervillain.
That 50 year. Okay.
What do you think? Yeah, what do you think? What should he get?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'd like to know. What is appropriate for Sam Bankman-Fried, the non-supervillain, the villain? Maybe that's what it is. It's the difference between being a villain or a supervillain.
I do think it's kind of interesting that it's far less than the 100 years recommended in U.S. criminal sentencing guidelines, but obviously much more than what Sam Bankman-Fried's lawyers say he should get, which is 6.5 years. I believe it's partially because the case involves over more than 1 million victims and losses of more than $10 billion.
That's a supervillain.
Apparently
some might say that's supervillain-esque.
Yeah, I'm not on the jury. I can say it. That's a supervillain. That $10 billion is a lot of money. Is what?
Yeah, but evidently they're going to get it back because of his investments. So they won't lose money in the end.
But usually that's pennies on the dollar,
IPO.
right? They're not going to get all of their money back, are they?
I think that there's some speculation that they could.
Oh. Well, that changes things-ish, but intent is still there, right?
Well, does it? Yeah, that's the thing. Intent is still there. The deceit is still there. The lack of accountability is still there.
And as Joe points out, you do need to
punishment?
Create a deterrent effect. Somebody needs to be made an example of, right? So that other people.
I don't think that's going to work with the crypto boys. They're going to think they're immune.
That's true. I mean, that's sort of part of the profile. Sorry, go ahead.
Interesting about this is I've got a couple links in line 87 and 88, which is as part of the sentencing, prosecutors posted a Google Doc that they say that Sam Bankman-Fried wrote in the days just after FTX collapsed, in which he mused about, quote, bad ideas for improving his image. And I'll just read some of these for you because they are...
These are bad ideas, mind you. These are bad.
The Google Doc says... in bold letters up at the top, note, these are all probably bad ideas that aren't vetted, confidential.
Confidential.
There's some normal ones like file the doc with problems about the Chapter 11 process. Go with the, quote, the lawyers were in a bad situation and I feel really bad about that like most people do. They reacted poorly to difficult circumstances. Number 3, go on Tucker Carlson. Come out as a Republican. Come out against the woke agenda. Talk about how the cartel of lawyers is destroying value and throwing entrepreneurs under the bus in order to cover up the incompetence of lawyers.
Wow.
We keep going on. Come out as extremely pro-crypto, pro-freedom. Go strong with the message of, I have funding ready to make customers whole. If only the Chapter 11 team would care about customers. Have Michael Lewis interview me on ABC. Go head-to-head with Matt Levine on Odd Lots. Really lean into arguments.
Then
if you
ideas.
go farther down the Google Doc, he has a couple of suggestions of subgroups that he could reach out to for support, including alt-right, ? And number 2, some other displaced group, ?
God.
Jeez.
He has only one ally listed, which is Skrelly, misspelled, but I assume he means Martin Skrelly. And under the random narratives part, he says, quote, let's see how he pleads as one of the narratives. And the last one is SBF died for our sins.
So he's Jesus.
You can't give Jesus 50 years in the slammer.
You can't call Jesus a supervillain. Let me out of here. I deserve 6 years at most. Boy. I think, again, you're
all right. So
right.
you're Judge Kaplan. You're Judge Kaplan, knowing everything you know.
Yeah.
Both of you. How many years do you give Sam Bankman-Fried?
I don't want to go first.
Paris?
I don't know. I don't think I can make this a hypothetical and remove. On one hand, personally, me, Paris, the person, not me, Paris, the journalist, who has no professional opinions on this whatsoever.
Of course not.
Me, Paris, the person, I don't entirely believe in our criminal justice system and a penitentiary model, but yet also I think that white-collar crime should be probably prosecuted at a level more equivalent to how we prosecute other crimes. If we're going to, take that into consideration. So I do think that there are situations like this where people need to face real consequences for actions that have harmed a lot of people.
So what? All right. So what is sufficient to say I better not do this because I could end up N years in Sing Sing?
I don't know. I think it depends on the person, right?
It does. I mean, hell, one week would be enough to make me say, okay, I won't do it.
Yeah,
I won't do it.
I don't know anything truly about this guy to know what that. I guess I would say this. Here's my ruling. I would let the judge. I would let the lawyers come forward. His lawyers come forward and say, this is what we think that Sam should get. And then I would add 5 to it. And that's what I would do. Because I think
that's about right.
Right.
6.5 plus 5, 11.5. I think that sounds...
The number of years that they're arguing for is the idea that this person should get the bare minimum, should be treated, as, he didn't do anything bad, everything, whatever. You did catch him. Let's give him a slap on the wrist. So I'll take that number and I'll add something to it. And that feels fair to me.
Yeah, if my lawyer said put me in jail for 6.5 years, I'd think, can't you ask for less?
Yeah, that's true.
I think it was 6.5.
Hey, if we're going 6.5, could we not just go, I don't know,
make it 5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is a jury has already convicted him of multiple crimes.
Yes.
Yeah, they convicted him of 7 charges, including wire fraud and conspiracy.
Yeah, those are bad things.
Oh, yeah, they are.
It's not typically what you want to do.
Yeah.
No, and Paris is right. White collar crime has to be more than marijuana.
Yeah. I mean, marijuana shouldn't even at this point, but that's a topic the show doesn't need to go into. I do think that.
Do you all not say that every week?
Why not? We go into everything else.
Anyway. I don't know. I think that it is notable how flagrant he acted.
Yes.
When it came to breaking the law. Like the reason I brought up this Google Doc, 1 is because it's funny, but 2, it's like, what sort of person is like, oh, my company has collapsed. I believe this was written after the bankruptcy proceedings had already started happening. I've lost like all of this money for all these people due to my lies. Let me sit here and brainstorm displaced groups and strange bedfellows that I can manipulate to get me back on top. That's a really disturbed way of thinking.
I agree with that 100%. And in that way, I do because what's to stop, you do this thing, right? And then you realize that you can do this thing and really not be punished for it all that much. Why not do it again? I think some level of serious reckoning needs to take place. But as you said, Jeff, at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stop others from doing it, because part of that profile, so to speak, is to feel invincible. I don't know. Yeah,
it's what Paris said. I mean, we're talking about 2 things at once: Sam Bankman-Fried and our entire so-called justice system. So,
let's talk about something that made me think of you, Jeff Jarvis, and that is Google getting hit with another fine in France. This time, it has to do with France saying, hey, we already have this whole issue where you, Google, profit, as France suggests, off of sharing news snippets from news publications when someone does a search. We also have a problem with you using the information from news organizations, from news publishers, I should say, to train your Gemini Bard model, your AI model. And so France is saying that requires that you pay us, or pay, I should say, a 250 million euro fine. And again, it made me think of you because this is sort of another segment of the earlier conversations about copyright, first and foremost, what they did in large part in Australia, and kind of how all of that is shaping out in general.
Exactly. Well, it so happens I have a big paper, 40-page paper coming out about the California Journalism Preservation Act next month, commissioned by the California Chamber of Commerce, full disclosure. And in there, I talk about the prior tranche of fines. So Google, when the variant on the Leistungsschutzrecht, the ancillary copyright, the European version of this went through, France was the first country to put it into law. And Google said, you got to give us permission to link to you, or we're not gonna. And that caused a suit. And so Google agreed to pay $76 million to 121 publications over 3 years. Then the Competition Authority fined Google 500 million euros for negotiating in bad faith, which is to say, negotiating, right? And this is around copyright. This is around Google itself linking to things. So now we go to, and so the entire news industry, this is what my paper is about, the entire news industry is trying to shrink fair use and expand copyright. They're trying to say that linking to us and quoting our headline is not fair use. Okay, Google, stop.
Google is trying to fight back against you.
They are. Yeah. It's on mute. Shouldn't do that. Sorry. So they're trying to expand copyright and shrink fair use when it comes to linking to their stories and giving them value. They're not acknowledging the value of the links. Okay. So now we advance forward to what I testified about in the Senate, which is using content for training models. Mm-hmm. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Well, it's already interesting, but here's where it gets devious, is that what the New York Times is saying, what they're saying in essence is, never mind going behind paywalls. If you read our content and use our content, then you must pay us. Well, that's an entirely new doctrine of copyright that says to the machine and the machine's owners, you can't even read something that's copyrighted, because everything in the world is copyrighted. Everything you write is copyrighted automatically now. So they're trying to argue that if you just read it and use it, you owe us money. And so the French government is coming down on the side of the publishers in this, what I would say is fakakta argument, and fining Google for $270 million. And I think it's completely wrong. This is what I said before the Senate. And it is the news industry that is ruining freedom of expression. It's ruining the right to learn. So one little plug for me, I'm holding an event in New York on April 30 with the Common Crawl Foundation about just this topic, the right to learn and AI and the open internet. You got an invitation, Paris. I hope you can
I'll
come.
be there.
Yay. And if you want one, you can let me know and I'll see what we have in terms of space. But this is a bigger issue. So the French government is siding with old publishers saying, oh, yes, your stuff is so precious that it shouldn't even be read without paying you. That's BS. And I hope this goes to the Court of Human Rights. And I hope somebody stands up for freedom of expression and the right to learn and the right to read. Thank you for that moment of ranting.
You're very welcome. The idea that the idea that there's a separation, right, between me going and reading something versus this thing going and reading something, taking it in on its own, that starts to get so messy so quick. And I can't remember, was it us? I was talking to somebody about microtransactions for sites, but the idea that as you're going around looking at a site, that every little thing that you do on the site, every link that you click, it must have been Steve Gibson, would cost you money. And in a world where you start to go down this path of discounting the right to read, that I or anyone doing anything anywhere online would be not protected as an action is, I don't know, that's just a complete breakdown in my mind of everything that, I don't know, I certainly hold dear.
I'll push back a little bit because I agree with your sentiment, Mikah, but I don't, and this is a point I feel like I've made in the show time and time again, is that I don't necessarily, I don't even think me as a writer is fully in this. I think it's just a misinterpreted argument in some sense. I don't think that a large language model, a model created by a commercial entity that exists for commercial purposes has any rights to anything, much less to read, which in this case means consume content and train itself on it. I do think that there are, more complicated questions to be asked here to say, do for-profit entities have the right to use other people's copyrighted material to enrich themselves?
So, Paris, you work for a commercial entity called The Information, which charges a lot of money to people, including me. Mm-hmm. And you read the New York Times, and you have a subscription, I imagine, and you believe that's part of your right. By reading the New York Times, you can use information that you got there. Not direct phrasing, but you can use that. And you can read people's blogs, and you can talk to sources, and you don't pay any of them for that, and you don't have a specific license to use that. But that is the essence of fair use, is that you have the right to learn from that, because information is free in that sense. Information.
But I'm not sure that a computer program necessarily has the same rights as me, a person?
Well, look at it this way. So how many, I had this somewhere, I think, in the rundown. A lot of the Pulitzer Prize nominees this year are, did I keep that in there? 5 of this year's Pulitzer finalists are AI powered.
What does that mean?
And do you know why that is? It's because most often the Pulitzer Prize finalists or winners are from like the same 3 incredibly large newsrooms, and the people that end up winning those awards are on teams where their whole job is to like work on a couple of stories tailor-made for awards over the course of a year. So of course they're going to use every tool at their disposal, which in certain cases includes AI.
Right. And so I would bet one of these is probably the New York Times. And the New York Times is suing OpenAI for doing what the New York Times does, which is to gather data and analyze it in a machine and then use it for their purposes, which are commercial. And that's what I'm trying to argue is that forget about the machine versus the peer person, the company versus the company. New York Times is a commercial enterprise. The information is a commercial enterprise. OpenAI is a commercial enterprise. That makes it an even playing field. They're all commercial enterprises.
But I think part of the difference is that in the case of something like OpenAI, what is being sold is explicitly the machine that is trained on the use of this machine that is getting smarter because it is trained on a specific data set that is growing ever larger. In the case of, say, like the New York Times or some other journalistic example, an AI model is being used to go through a large data set, which might be one sentence, a reference to which will be like one sentence in a story that is like of 3,000 to 4,000 words. I think it's very different because ultimately, in the case of like the New York Times, the commercial aspect of the enterprise is you're paying for a subscription to a body of work produced by thousands of journalists versus OpenAI, you're paying to use a commercial tool that derives its value from the work of others.
Well, but what it derives its value from isn't the information. That information, by the way, is free because you can't copyright information in an enlightened society. What it's deriving the value from is grammar. It's the coincident placement of words and the tokenization that occurs as a result. So it's learning how to speak. So that skill of speaking.
If grammar is all that matters, then why doesn't, OpenAI and these other places just totally swerve this issue and exclusively use works where copyright is expired to train all of their data set? It's because the answer to that is because they want up-to-date information so they can provide people with correct, relevant, new info because that's what they're geting out of it. Well, they search for something.
But of course, the models are stale, and you don't actually get current information. This is where I've been arguing when I've interviewed the CTO of Schibsted, the Swedish publisher or Norwegian publisher, both on AI Inside show with Jason. I've been arguing that we in news should create an API for news, that we should make our content available to them with a deal. And say, here, you can have a key to this API to get current information when you need it. And that's what's happening in Europe. I really wanted to go. There's a conference in April on AI and media in Copenhagen next month, which I can't go to, which is killing me because they have a different attitude. They're trying to say, where can we mutually benefit here and use this going forward? And Norway is building its own LLMs with its own stuff to do that. It's a smarter way. Whereas what's happening here is the New York Times is suing them and saying, get out, stay out. Well, the truth is the New York Times is fungible. OpenAI doesn't have to use the New York Times. It can use lots of content, lots and lots of, it can use Business Insider, right? They've done a deal with
it is, yeah.
Right. They've done a deal with Springer.
Axel Springer, yeah.
And what does Business Insider do? It reads the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and rewrites them. So it would get the same information. It would get the same associations. Otherwise, they could do that. Yeah, they probably will.
OpenAI is about to get really into 5 bullet point summaries.
and pictures of, I took a train trip and let me give you 40 photos about it.
I will say, I was friends with a lot of people who worked at Business Insider, and unfortunately, those articles that we all love to hate, those make them so much money. It's because we all click on them to hate.
Exactly, because it's the easiest way to get the information.
I went to a random town in Wisconsin. Here's what I thought about it.
And it somehow sucks us in. Mikah, there's another point too, I think, which is one of the ironies or paradoxes or something like that of this, is that the NFT boys and the crypto boys and the blockchain boys, they talk a lot about ownership. Everything should be owned, which is kind of your conversation with Steve. You come across anything, I own it, and you got to pay me for it. Everything is a bridge with a troll and a toll, and you got to pay for it. And that's the exact opposite of the ethos, to me, of the internet, is information is out there, and we can all take advantage of that information, and that you can't own information itself. So there's a fight going on here, not just among the old publishers, but even among the new boys here around this notion of ownership.
Yeah, because it sounds
Mikah.
like really what you're saying is there's a separation between information, which you perhaps are suggesting should just be, as you're saying, it's free, it's available to everybody. How does that reconcile with, especially for the career I used to have, Paris's current career, like how does journalism exist in a world? Now I'm playing like both sides here. How does journalism exist in a world where information is fully and truly free online? Is that possible?
So I write about this in one of my earlier books, where it's the diamond and water paradox. Diamonds are pretty much useless, but they're incredibly valuable. Water is absolutely necessary, but it's almost free. Mm-hmm. And it comes around similarly around information. And I happen to have in front of me the famous quote from Judge Louis Brandeis about just this issue, dissenting in INS versus AP, that the general rule of law is that the noblest of human production, knowledge, truths ascertained, conceptions and ideas, become, after voluntary communication to others, free as the air to common use. Now, an important phrase there is after voluntary communication to others, not after theft. Theft would be I go behind the paywall and I take your publication and I don't pay you for it. That's a fair issue to have. But once the information is out there, once I've read it and I repeat it to you on a show like this, right? I read the information before we got on the air, and it cost me, I got a good discount of $299. But I repeated all the valuable information in that article, and that's my right. That's fair use. That's perfectly fine and legal. But we won't let a company with a machine do the same thing, and we're all going to use that machine. But it's all right, Paris. Let me try it again. Do you say the same thing about search engines and social media? To look at the California Journalism Preservation Act, they are saying that you shouldn't even link to and quote a headline of a news publication in either search engines or social media unless you license and pay for that rate. What do you think about that?
I mean, I disagree with that because I think that it's ridiculous. I think we can all agree that a headline and a link, which would take you to one site where you can choose to pay or not pay, it's fair game and it's mutually beneficial.
So, again, tell me what's different from the DeepMind division of Google versus the search division of Google.
I think that one is consuming the entirety of other people's content and basically creating its own value from that.
So Google,
and the other is aggregating links.
Google, the search engine to work, it comes in with all of that content, not just the headlines. It absorbs, it crawls all of that content. It makes
just the
judgments
content
about
that is
content.
available to the crawler. A lot of people don't have all of their content.
True all around. If you follow, do not follow links, that's fine, right? And robots.txt. But what Google does is, in fact, read the entire article so it can understand how to group news articles together and understand them. It may only display the headline, but it read the whole article. It read the entire site. It did exactly what you just said to create a good search or news experience.
Mikah, what do you think on this? You're being very Switzerland. Jeff and I talk about this. We have this same argument every single week.
Every time, yeah.
Ultimately, I think I'm leaning towards the Jarvis camp from the perspective of I guess it almost has a more rose tinted shades kind of feel to it. And I tend to be more the optimist. But the interesting thing is, and I say that optimistic in terms of information being free and wanting it to be the case that people can read a story and share that information, and that does not come, that there's no issue there, or even more so that we have social media platforms where people can make stupid jokes with images from shows, and that doesn't have to be something that the platform has to pay for and get in trouble for, which means that basically all of the means of social media that we have would get closed down. In that aspect,
you're defending Joe Esposito. Let's be clear here, right now.
Yeah, exactly. That is some of the stuff that I value about the web, and it's some of the stuff that I see as the important aspects of the web. And the thing is that underneath those rose-tinted shades, there is also that realism aspect too, because it's happening, and it has happened, and it continues to happen. And as I think also, as Jeff points out there at the end, the idea that web crawlers are doing their web crawly thing, not to mention that robots.txt is not an official agreed upon legal or even like sub-legal standard. That's just something that people hand shook on years and years ago. I just jostled the microphone for the 5th time. And so web crawlers tend to follow that, but there's nothing that says that they have to. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's even, further outreach. That's where I stand. But at the same time, I do think that if something is behind a paywall, is locked off, is unable to be seen, and that the agreement is you pay for it to get to see it, that stuff should not be taken in.
I agree with that.
And so I think that maybe.
So you mean the New York Times, Jeff? Behind a paywall?
Let's put it this way. No, the New York Times material that was on that they demanded to be taken down from Common Crawl was out in public for free. I'll argue the other way then. I subscribe to the New York Times. All I need is one subscription to the New York Times to buy the New York Times. All I need is to buy one book to read the book. Yeah, okay, fine. I'll go to that extreme. All that OpenAI has to do is have one subscription to the Times, and it should be able to use it. I can't
believe I've somehow talked you into being more radical as part of this. This is how extremism happens.
Piece by piece.
A Paris rabbit hole. We've gone down a Paris tunnel just now.
Oh, wow.
Hey, this is Benito. I've been listening to this argument for the last couple of months now.
I was about to say, is it getting a little old, Benito?
No, and I've always fallen into sort of in Paris's camp, and this is mostly not really because of the training and all this stuff, but because of I see the ultimate end goal of these companies is to ultimately cut us out, and that's sort of like the problem that I see in this is that this is what they want to do. They want to make it so that there are no more journalists, so that the computer is writing everything, and this is sort of like the issue that I have with it. It's not necessarily the training data and all that other stuff. It's like what their end goals are. That's what I don't.
I totally agree.
So we have camp against camp here. Mikah, you have to come back every week now so that I have an ally.
You have an ally. His name is Leo Laporte.
Yeah,
Leo often disagrees with me for the sport of it. Not necessarily a story for us, but a quick mention that both Gannett and McClatchy, two of the 3 largest newspaper chains in America, just said yesterday they're going to stop using the Associated Press, stop paying for it. Well, that isn't just a matter of them stopping to pay for it, which is bad because where are they going to get their news from when they don't care because they're crappy papers owned by hedge funds? A
significant amount of their news, it's worth pointing out, has come from the Associated Press up until right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tons.
Where are they?
But the other part of this is the Associated Press is a cooperative. So members of the Associated Press give their content to the network for the good of all. And I presume they're dropping out of that as well. And so there's this clamping down where the news industry figured out how to share among itself. They used to fight. First they sent boats out to meet the boats from England to grab the news first. And that was expensive because they had competing boats. So they agreed, honest to God, to start renting the same boat to get the same stuff. That's basically the beginning of a wire service.
Guys, then along comes a news boat, just a brief aside.
I think we did that, yes.
We should bring it back.
Is there a river near Petaluma?
We have a little
float
river
down on the news boat.
Yeah, we got a little river.
Then came the telegraph, and so they needed to figure out how to do that, and they tried to keep out, like Hearst wanted to keep Pulitzer out of it. And then finally they agreed, okay, we're going to have a wire service together. And that's how the AP came. And now we see these big, awful companies tearing it apart. The same thing Murdoch did in Australia, where he pulled out of the wire service, and thus it lost value. So we've got to think too about, especially as journalists, our obligation to the larger news and information ecosystem in society. In the paper I'm writing about the legislation in California, one of the ideas I'm throwing out a whole bunch of ideas, but one is to say, okay, all right, if Google or tax dollars are going to create a fund for news, why shouldn't that be used to buy content out of the paywall for the good of all the public? If the public's going to pay the freight, then why shouldn't the public benefit from it? Everything is going behind paywalls right now, and fine, you got to earn your living. That's okay. And the information is unique in this because it has unique information, unique reporting. But the average cadet paper, it's crap.
We do have to take a break, I'm realizing.
Benito is thankful.
So, yes, let me tell you about a sponsor on this episode of This Week in Google. It's CacheFly. You've heard of CacheFly. For more than 20 years, CacheFly has held a track record for high-performing, ultra-reliable content delivery, serving more than 5,000 companies in more than 80 countries. At twit.tv, we've been using CacheFly. I'll say at Twit. We've been using CacheFly for more than a decade, and we love the lag-free video loading, hyper-fast downloads, and friction-free site interactions. CacheFly is the only CDN built for throughput. Ultra-low latency video streaming delivers video to more than 1 million concurrent users. Lightning-fast gaming delivers downloads faster with zero lag, glitches, or outages. Mobile content optimization offers automatic and simple image optimization so your site loads faster on any device, plus flexible month-to-month billing for as long as needed and discounts for fixed terms. You can design your contract when you switch to CacheFly. CacheFly delivers rich media content up to 158% faster than other major CDNs and allows you to shield your site content in its cloud, ensuring a 100% cache hit ratio. And with CacheFly's elite managed packages, you will get the VIP treatment. Your dedicated account manager will be with you from day one, ensuring a smooth implementation and reliable 24/7 support when you need it. So learn how you can get your first month free at cachefly.com/twit. That's CACHEFLY.com/twit. And we thank CacheFly for sponsoring this week's episode of This Week in Google. All right, back from the break. And I do want to say, this is, maybe we'll move on from this, but it is a hard thing when it's a hard but very real thing when you do consider the human beings that are potentially impacted by some of the aspects of what surround this argument or discussion that we're having, right? Because, I have long, I think, rolled my eyes at there's a huge swath of especially digital art creators who get a little up in arms about what generative AI is able to do. And then there's the conversation about how Gen AI will never reach the level of not perplexity, but will never reach the level of complexity that it would even come close to a human. You'll always be able to tell between a human and something that's created by generative AI. But increasingly, we are seeing many a publication decide to pick up generative AI content, especially for some of the very quick stories that they can write about, sports outcomes and other things that don't require much brain power. And that's where I fall in with what you're saying, Benito, this idea that those of us who have long held a job in a field that is perhaps being threatened by this. But I also think, Jeff, that's almost a separate argument from the general argument that you were making, right? I mean, that maybe it's not an argument, it's more of a point of consideration, but it has nothing, or it if we can think about things in a vacuum, which we as humans do not do, then that's where I really fall into that camp of understanding what you're saying, which is that if we start saying that a machine can't read this thing that's available to everybody else, where do we draw the line? Does that soon mean that, we're setting more rules? And that exists here. But then you also look over here and you've got 5 of your friends who work in journalism, I guess sports journalism specifically, who have these sad faces on, who are going, AI took my job. And then this starts to fall down. And I guess that's where it's very complex and where it is interesting hearing from the both of you and your perspectives, because that is also where I understand, Paris, your point about like, this is a company who makes money by using information from a company that needs to make money off of its own information. And so if it is going to that company and taking that information for itself, where, should that not be paid for or what have you? I get all the perspectives is what I'm saying.
I think something also that kind of goes unsaid often in our debates on this is that, which I think is a really good point, Mikah, is that part of what is motivating the reactions from, I guess, regulators on this, as well as kind of the outcry, sometimes to a ridiculous extent, like the outcry over like headlines or links that you mentioned, Jeff, part of what is motivating this is a feeling of, well, we as an industry didn't really, or I guess as a society also didn't fully catch the tech companies and regulate them when we should have. Yeah. There is this whole moment that we're in of kind of animus that is motivated by, well, we screwed it up. We let all of these companies grow so large, accumulate a large amount of social and political power, and now we are starting to see a new industry grow, and the inclination is to crack down hard to make up for our past mistakes. And obviously, I don't think any of us can say whether or not that is a good instinct that will bear out well. I'm sure we will probably just make as many mistakes in the future as we have in the past. But I think that it's worth, interrogating a bit, is the idea that people want to be a lot more proactive when it comes to regulating industries that could enact sweeping changes across the rest of industry broadly.
It's a little rich for folks in media to complain about growing big and powerful on controlling power, when that's the essence of what media have done. And media try to, in the paper I'm writing,
well, Jeff,
I do the history.
A little rich for you to say this, looking at the places where you have worked over your career, where you have accumulated power.
I agree. Absolutely what I'm saying is that I think that we have to be self-reflective at this point about what media have done in society. And that's what I'm really asking for here is if you want a fair playing field, then if we read other stuff and get information, then so should others be able to do that. If we get criticized for holding on to power, if they get criticized for holding on to power, so should we get criticized for that. But of course, who are the ones who do the criticizing? Us in media. Yeah. Who don't we criticize? Us in media. And the hegemony of media, going back to when radio arrived, newspapers tried everything they could, exactly like the script is exactly what it is today. They tried to expand copyright and shrink fair use. They tried to get the new medium regulated, and they succeeded in cutting a slice out of the First Amendment with the FCC. They tried to prohibit radio journalists from competing with them. They tried to prohibit the new medium from getting into advertising and competing with them. They complained about how it was hurting them until enough of the newspaper owners bought radio stations. And then it was all okay. And so we've got a very checkered history in our industry. And yes, I'm part of that. I've been part of that industry my whole life, my very long life. And I think that we should start by looking at home. And part of the problem here is that, Mikah, you're right to be certainly empathetic to the journalists who are affected, but the blame in my mind starts not with Google. It starts with their own incompetent, greedy owners who got up too much debt in their consolidations and then became vulnerable to hedge funds buying distressed debt. And that's why they are where they are right now. And so they're using their lobbying money to try to get money from Google and Meta, if Meta doesn't drop news like they did in Canada, to pay the big old hedge fund owned companies. Any news organization that doesn't already earn $100,000 a year is counted out. So a whole mess of diasporic and black media and startups and community media won't get a penny from this stuff because the lobbyists don't care about them. The lobbyists for the hedge funds are going for the big guys. So yeah, we can complain about the nastiness of big corporate life in the platforms, but let's look in a mirror too. As a whole, I like the information. I'm not saying the information, but I am saying as a whole, the media industry is sucky.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree with that.
I think we can all agree with that.
All right, then let's move on because I do want to talk about
Yes.
nVidia, NVIDIA's conference. So NVIDIA had what I still feel is a very techie, very nerdy conference, the GPU Technology Conference. And Jeff Jarvis and I happen to cover the event here on Twit. And at this event, NVIDIA announced some new hardware, the Blackwell chip, as well as sort of the overall Blackwell platform, which is this whole system of chips and hardware that all come together in these huge devices that, again, weigh about 2.5 Leos. And they are supposed to be more energy efficient. But what was interesting is that it wasn't like they're more energy efficient so you can feel good about not hurting the environment with all of the AI stuff you're generating. It was, no, they're more energy efficient so you can use more of them at once to do even more than you've ever been than you've done before. Plus a whole lot more. So I thought we could kind of break into it first and foremost with the Blackwell portion of the program and how they're kind of combining this new Blackwell architecture alongside the Grace CPUs that they have, although they did ditch the Grace Hopper GPUs in favor of this newer technology. Named after a mathematician, I believe it was.
Grace Hopper is a famous pioneer of computers.
Yes.
Let me try this out on Paris.
But Blackwell.
He holds the Blackwell chip named after a black mathematician, I think he was.
Mathematician.
David Blackwell. And then he holds the Grace Hopper chip. And the one is going to supersede the other. And then he looks at the Grace Hopper chip and says, "Good girl."
Ooh.
Yeah, that's what we said too. Yeah.
Same reaction.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that was bad.
I was going to say that anecdote is the only thing I know about that conference, to be totally honest. My
you heard
question,
that before?
And I had heard that, yes. And that was my earnest and actual response when I read it for the first time, as well as perform for you guys live right now.
Very good work.
But my question is, this is perhaps a bit of a faux pas to me. Why should I care about this? As someone who historically, my brain, I feel like turns off when I hear about chip developments. Why should I care? Is it just that they'll be able to do more?
I love that
faster?
question because, I mean, yes, you're right. At the very base of it, it's that they'll be able to do more faster. But I think the only reason you should care, and maybe it's something that once I tell you, you're going to be like, well, I care even less, is because as we know, NVIDIA is at the heart of a lot of the generative AI stuff that's out there in the world right now. So any improvements to this technology likely means improvements to all of the Gen AI tech that we're seeing across the board. Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, Google are all different partners that work with Blackwell. And so we're bound to see lots of different services start using these in the background, given that they're already using the current run that has the Hopper chips in them. So
I know that a big
way,
point of contention, that is interesting, yes. I know that a big point of contention for when it comes to these chips is availability or the lack thereof. What's going on, I guess, with the supply chain for these? Is it realistic to assume that these chips will be available and in use by all those companies you just mentioned imminently? or is it again going to be a supply chain issue like previous iterations?
That is a really good question.
He didn't address that.
Yeah, he didn't address it on stage. I'm reading in this piece here that NVIDIA has since said that they are going to be available later this year to the companies that might be scooping this up. But this is like so far up the chain kind of purchases. These are very, very, very expensive products that it was clear were, it's layers and layers and layers of difference between what we would buy versus what they would buy up the line. So I imagine they don't need to make as many of them, I guess is what I'm saying. But yeah, what was interesting, Jeff, too, is that they did speak on a very short scale. Everything that, and remind me of the CEO's name.
Wang.
Wang, yeah, Wang was saying
Wang.
Was 5 years. It was all about 5 years. And that over the course of the next 5 years, these are all of the things that we're planning on doing at NVIDIA. This is what's going to be changing at NVIDIA. And brushing up against wanting to utter the 3 letters that many of us are kind of going, okay, which of course is AGI. We felt that kind of happen a few times where there was hinting at that. But I also
say it, but he hinted.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't say it, but hinted at it. I also found it interesting how often we saw the Apple Vision Pro pop up in this keynote. It was there's a lot of talk about.
I can see Paris is
Why?
furrowing her brow.
Exactly. You'd think, what's going on? Well, there was a huge part of the show devoted to, and then sprinkled throughout afterward, a concept called a digital twin, which is not it's not like a K-pop version of you or me. No, sadly, it's not a K-pop performer version of you and me. It is instead on a sort of far more massive scale, a company can create a digital version of, for example, a manufacturing plant that they plan to build. And then in the digital version, they can not only test out workflows and simulate things to see how eventually it will run and what would be the best opportunity for it, but NVIDIA ended up talking a little bit later, which we'll get to, robotics, and using these digital twins to train the robots in this virtual space before they're brought to the real world. But earlier on, when they first started talking about digital twins, they were using Apple Vision Pro as a way to tour your digital twin workspace. So you could walk through and see how the manufacturing plant was going to be built up. And I made sort of the joke to Jeff that I felt like this was going to bring forth a whole new era of Karens and Kevins, I guess. Sorry, Kevin. Which are the people who are wearing these Apple Vision Pros walking up to the contractors and saying, no, you can't put that sewer pipe there because this is telling me that's a bad place for it. Not having any idea what they're talking about. And that seems like my nightmare. Anyway.
Let me go to your question, Paris. Why should you give a damn? I'm somewhat the same way. The very early days of Twit, I would tune in and they would have a discussion about the specs of a new monitor. And I would say, why should I give a damn? I really don't care. Does it turn on or not? Right. But this is at that point, they cared about the hardware and it was interesting. And of course, then it became very boring. And we didn't care about that anymore.
Somewhere out there, a lot of listeners are going, hey, I care.
I care about those
specs.
The nits of my monitor. Damn it, Drivers. Don't you kill my nits. But so part of what happens, obviously, is that high technology and hardware view, I think, fades in the background. Clay Shirky famously said the social media gets interesting when it gets boring, what people do with it. And I think the same was true with other technologies. So I was the same way. I didn't really, NVIDIA chips, they asked me to do the thing with Mikah, and I like Mikah. So, okay, I'll do this. I'll learn something about it. It's fine. And a lot of it, I didn't understand. We both admitted going up, we didn't understand a lot of it. What struck me with it was this, Paris, is that the scale at which they think is awe-inspiring in good ways and bad. I mean, fine, good, they can think big. But my Lord, when they started saying what all this one chip could do, how exponentially bigger and faster and more transistors and more petaflops of floating point transactions it could do, 30 billion trillion floating point transaction, 30 billion trillion floating point transaction, whatever the hell that means, right?
I was going to say,
so just that is
how
huge,
many dairy
right?
cows is that? I don't know.
Yeah. And then you put two of them on this board that looks like a robot with two chips and then a nose and then a mouth. And that costs a fortune, right? And then you put a bunch of those boards in a device, and then you put a bunch of those devices in a rack, and then you put a bunch of those racks in a row, and then you put a bunch of those rows in a data center. And they're illustrating this growing. When you think about the scale of that one chip and now the multiplication of it across all of that. And then Huang says, now you got to fill all that up. And that's when we get back to our data conversation, is that they've already sucked up all the possible human data they can get. Now they're going to make up a whole bunch of data, just to fill these things, just to do these things. And this brings me back, as it often does, to the Stochastic Parrots paper, where they screamed about enough of you boys with your size matters making the ever bigger models. That's dangerous. It consumes electricity. It ruins human lives who have to work with it. It can't be audited for what goes in or what comes out. Stop. And I felt a bit of that where I wanted to scream at some point. I didn't, because I didn't want to blare into Mikah's ear. Stop. Enough already. It's bloody big enough. And I understand that's stupid. I understand they're going to go ahead and build big things. They're going to build bigger things. That's the way the world operates. I understand that. But the scale of it, it's about a third of the way into the presentation, I was saying, oh, hell, this is big and it's going to have implications. Now, at the same time, I believe that open source small models are going to matter a great deal, because they're going to enable researchers and small companies and other countries and other languages to work. And that's where I want to see the development. And that's what Jan LeCun talks about more at Meta. And I think that I agree with the Stochastic Parrots paper's authors that the big models are crazy in a lot of ways, but oh my God, they're going to get even bigger. So I think that there was and I don't look at this in a policy sense. I just look at this in a societal sense of saying these things are going to get really huge. How are people going to imagine using this computing power that we can't even imagine now? And I'm not moral panicking. I'm not suggesting it needs to be regulated, because I don't know what you're regulating. But I am saying we got to pay attention. Is that an answer?
That is an answer. It was a beautiful monologue.
Thank you very much.
I'm contemplating all of those rows and rows of chips.
If you even looked at that, we should find that one 3-minute part of the presentation. Not
it just
today,
kept zooming out and zooming out.
Yeah,
and zooming out.
It was. Oh shoot!
And they said it's your job to fill all of this with data processing, essentially. And they explained how one word is essentially three. What are they?
Tokens.
Thank you. And so a phrase. And they used a phrase from Star Trek was, 30, 40 tokens. And that was a moment for me where I thought, oh my goodness, sometimes I get really wordy when I'm talking to these GPTs. And so I'm just imagining how many tokens I'm taking up at a time with some of the things that I say to these, or, ask of these GPTs. It's very interesting. They also... This was an opportunity for the company to flex. And for the company, it wasn't even just a flex, it was like a peacocking flex. And I say that because, again, the part where I mentioned earlier, the backbone of a lot of the processing and the creation of and the work on different AI models, but the consumers especially, and then those of us who are sort of, one level away from consumers, being that we have more knowledge than the average consumer about this stuff, also may not realize it. We think about Microsoft and its Copilot. We think about Google and its Gemini. We think about OpenAI and its ChatGPT and other tools, right? And so I think that it was an opportunity for nVidia to go, don't forget about us. Y'all are getting all excited about this, and we love that. Let me tell you about how that's us in a lot of the way. And then also at the same time, show what we have planned for the coming years past just making better GPUs, better, bigger GPUs. And they showed, as I mentioned, robotics, technology. Again, this had a lot to do with that digital twin I was talking about, where you would have a robotic factory like at Amazon, and if there was an earthquake or something and some of the boxes fell off the shelf, a robot, as it currently stands, would, like a Roomba, like drive down that lane and then get stuck and wonder what it's supposed to do. In the future, you could train it. What happens if that happens? It can do different routes, but more importantly, you don't actually have to simulate it in real life for it to be trained. You can safely do it in a system that's in a digital twin so that you don't have to, accidentally hurt somebody while you're just trying to prevent people from getting hurt. You can run over your digital human beings and, understand what's supposed to be done in that situation. You can drive cars that hit people in a digital simulation and try to train against that. And then you don't have to do any of that in real life, where often in cases that's illegal. Hopefully in every case that's illegal. So I found that kind of compelling. And then, of course, Jeff, you and I both waxed ecstatic about the work that's being done in healthcare, particularly when it comes to molecule creation and protein synthesis and all of that kind of medical modeling. But at the same time, waxed distraught, I guess, about this idea of talking to a digital nurse who I could say, I took St. John's wort this week, and I'm about to take some new anxiety medication. Do you think that's a good idea? And boy, I hope that digital AI nurse would say, no. St. John's wort is going to make your body absorb 5 times the normal amount of that anxiety medication that you would otherwise. So do not take the 2. But can we count on that? I don't know if we can count on that. No. So that part I was not too jazzed about, but
Mara still wants her doctor. What's her doctor's name? Dr. Jim? No, Dr. Bill?
Dr. Dan. And you guys,
Dan.
Terrible news. I received word last week while we were recording the show that Dr. Dan is leaving New York. I'm going to have to find a new doctor, and I'm really devastated about it.
That breaks my heart because I feel for you so much.
Where is Dr. Dan going? Why would he leave the center of the universe?
Ask him.
The center of the universe.
Sorry,
Micah.
It's okay. No, that's fine by me. I don't care where the center of the universe is. That's fine. I just
you don't want to be.
Center of the universe is a one medical office in Tribeca.
if I could afford to, I would. I feel it because the doctor I had in Missouri, she was incredible. She was amazing, and even when I left the city, I was like 3 hours away. I would drive back to go to that doctor because she was so amazing. If I could afford to, and also not feel guilty about, if I could Taylor Swift it and not care about flying in a plane so much, I would go back to her even still as my doctor. But yeah that's just not. Do you know where he's going?
No, I've got to find out. I haven't. I've been too distraught.
I will move, Dr. Dan.
Dr. Dan.
I will move. I won't leave. Listen, I love Dr. Dan. I can't leave New York.
Can't leave the center of the universe. I understand.
I can't.
So he used some interesting phrases too. He talked about the omniverse a lot.
Yes, the omniverse was part of this.
So the universe that consumes both meat and plants?
I guess so.
That's the joke that Jeff made.
That is. Yes. The omnivorous.
After a certain number of weeks, our brains will just become one.
There's a GPT trained on both of your responses in the works right now.
We were replaced. That's fine. He talked about accelerated computing, which sounded a lot like effective acceleration to me. He talked about when you get your model going, you do this, you do that, then you guardrail it.
Yeah, guardrail it. Yeah.
Then you guardrail it?
Then you guardrail it. He talked about being not just a chip foundry, but an AI foundry, making foundry. But then the one that got, I think, both of us more than anything else, he said about robotics, quote, everything that moves will be robotic.
Let's just sit with that for a moment. everything that moves will be robotic.
So I don't have to do my exercise anymore. I'm going to have my
That sounds
robot
like
do
a
it.
curse.
They
that a
did
witch
actually
would put upon you.
They showed
Yes.
a physical therapist that was not
Yes,
human,
a
but
robot
instead was a
physical
robot.
therapist. Yes.
And I just thought that thing is going to it's going to be like, you think you can only stretch this far? I will show you how far you can stretch. Stop
Jane,
whining.
stop this crazy
Stop
thing.
whining. Stop whining.
Didn't a robot famously give you a medical exam or something?
Who?
Jeff, or was that Leo?
I was like, I hope that's
That
not about
scared
me
Micah.
because that was really, I thought Leo told some fake
I guess
story.
it must have been Leo because
Leo has gotten a full body scan from a machine, but it wasn't a robot that did it. He like went in. It's like a full body MRI situation that he's done, but I don't know if he's gotten a robotic body. Although I wouldn't put it past him. Frankly, while he was on that trip with the AI person, maybe there was a robot there.
Anything could have
happened. Anything could have happened on that day. Yeah, the acceleration that they were talking about. This I found this fascinating for a while. There's this growing belief or understanding, I guess it's almost becoming an understanding, that Moore's law is falling apart and that we cannot continue to miniaturize and therefore accelerate the computer technology that we have, and that that chart that was once just ramping up every 10 years is not something that we're going to be able to continue to sustain. And so there's need to look at different ways of improving upon computing without running up against our ability to shrink the process from 10 to 7 to 5 nanometers, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where the belief part comes into play, and especially, as you can imagine with NVIDIA, is that AI could play a heavier role in figuring out how to improve upon performance, even if we can't continue to shrink the process that we have to make chips. And so that is where that accelerate came into play, talking about using AI to, again, improve upon that. And interestingly, I didn't remember there being mention of this, Jeff, while we were watching. But after that keynote, I saw a news story that, and this boggles my brain. NVIDIA is having a simulated quantum computer so that people can so that companies can quantum compute in a simulated environment. But I'm going, how can you quantum compute without a quantum computer? How can you simulate a quantum computer without having a quantum computer there to simulate
chips in it?
Yeah. So I didn't understand it, but I was just wondering if you remembered that on stage.
No, I didn't remember that.
Quantum simulation, NVIDIA. Let's see what it says here.
He kept on saying that things were not animation; they were simulations.
Yeah, they were trying to make it very clear.
Okay, I will say all of this quantum
just fake.
simulation, digital twins. It sounds like we were in the beginning of like a BioShock spinoff.
I think he may have thought that too. There were, remarking on the performance overall. So up to a certain point, and Jeff really, I think, nailed this, because up to a certain point, when somebody's making a mistake or making a few mistakes, it's cringy, right? But it's almost like I guess it would be a bell curve-ish sort of thing, because once it gets up to a certain point of mistakes made and owning up to those mistakes, it starts to fall out of the cringy graph and back down into the sort of earnest graph. Yeah. And that's where he got for us. At first I'm going, okay, this guy literally mentioned on stage that he hadn't rehearsed this, and this is what we get for not rehearsing. And that at first was kind of like, ooh. But he just sort of leaned into a lot of it, and it got back into it.
He did jokes where he thought there was going to be a laugh line, and it wasn't, and they petaflopped.
They did. They petaflopped, yes. It was giving Jeb Bush.
Sorry, I recycled that joke from when we did it, but I couldn't help myself.
That's the cringiest thing for me, the please clap moment from Jeb Bush.
Please clap has become something more beautiful.
It has.
Please clap has quantified in its cringiness. It is, it has become a legend in and of itself.
The generative quantum eigensolver. Thank you. Eigensolver.
Eigen.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can someone give me context for what that means? Why is it called
Eigen?
It's a mathematical thing. Eigen. But apparently it leverages, you guessed it, LLMs to enable a quantum computer to find the ground state energy of a molecule more quickly, as we all need to do. I find myself wondering as I sit and drink my coffee in the morning, what is the ground state energy of the molecule I glance upon?
I'm always asking myself that.
Yeah. What is the ground state energy of a molecule? If I ever look thoughtful, it's not because I'm zoning out. It's because I'm wondering what the ground state energy of this morning's molecule is about. Anyway, sorry. Let's sort of get back on track. Let's talk about, I did want to talk about this. A couple of things to do with OpenAI. Yes, I know, more AI stuff. Wait, sorry, Paris, did you? Oh, I thought I heard you breathe like, I had an idea. So Business
I was
Insider.
contemplating the ground state of a molecule.
Oh, good. Did you come up with the answer?
Still contemplating.
Okay,
I'll
She was breathing
Get back to
heavily
us.
during that process. Yes.
5 eigenvalues.
You needed more energy to do that.
Yeah, we can need a little more energy.
It's true. I've got to really oxidate the blood.
She was air cooling her processor.
So OpenAI, according to our favorite publication, Business Insider, is reportedly releasing GPT-5 this coming year. And this is the moment where I wanted to ask Jeff, you talked a lot about where you foresee AI going, and also not just you yourself, but where you've read about how people want to see AI going forward. It was the paper that you mentioned. You brought it up several times during our
Stochastic parents.
Thank you. About sort of what smaller purpose-built sort of situations. I think you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll get through the question first. In a GPT-5 situation, which is supposed to be, quote, materially better and also supposed to feature some new, supposed to have some new features, what do you think GPT-5 is going to present us? Because it can already do photos. It can already do all sorts of text stuff. Through plugins, it can generate music. I guess it doesn't do video just yet, although we've seen some video.
We've seen the preview of that, I think.
Yeah. So how does a GPT, or how does ChatGPT's GPT-4 improve to GPT-5, do you think?
I think the thing that would scare the breath out of Paris is if it figured out how to do facts. Because it doesn't.
It's
and
not
then
going
it
to be
can
able
threaten
to.
news.
And I think it's ridiculous to assume that it would be able to, because that would imply a level of understanding and a concept of truth that does not exist with a
It's not.
large
But
language model.
can it call on something and cite it at that level? Can it then mimic the value of a search engine? Let's say that mimic the value.
It kind of similar to Notebook LM.
Treat a defined corpus as something to go to. Yeah, I think that is something they've got to tackle. But I think Paris is completely right. Just fundamentally, these things do not do meaning. There is no meaning to them. Thus, no fact. I don't know, Paris. What do you think the next generation is of these things on these super big machines?
I think it's probably going to be similar to what we have now, but I believe, what was the word it said? Materially better. I bet it'll be marginally better. I bet it will have a more up-to-date corpus. I bet it will have ironed out a number of common kinks. I bet it'll, be GPT-4, but updated after however long it's been, based on all of the testing and training that they've done.
mean, I think that it's like a new phone. At some point, it gets to be like a new phone. I can't even remember whether I have the 6 or the 7 sometimes. Does it matter?
Well, okay.
We used to care.
3.5. Are you asking if there's a difference between 3.5 and 4?
Yeah, there's differences, but I think at some point it's their differences that make. I mean, again, just like in the early days of Twit, they talked about, the new monitor has this many hinges and no, wow, yeah, that has 3 plugs, right? And everybody got excited about it. And no, we don't care. The same thing around operating systems, right? When we used to talk about, oh my God, there's a new version.
I see what you're saying. It's all so.
And at some point, you don't care because it's all so similar.
And I will eat my words if I end up being wrong.
Okay.
But I think that I will admit it on the show because I'm sure we'll talk about it when GPT-5 comes out. But I think that we have been at a point where this technology has improved dramatically and it's been very impressive. And we're going to be at a plateau for a little bit after that until we hit the next big inflection point. And I don't necessarily think that GPT-5 is going to be that.
Yeah. So you're saying we're at that okay plateau. You think so?
Yeah,
5
it's going to keep getting better, and it's like still a really transformative technology. It's not going to, probably will not increase exponentially, with this release. Like I think that if it was an exponential increase, in terms of the quality of its output and the things it can do, the sources talking to Business Insider wouldn't describe it as materially better.
That's true.
They would be like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
The most insane thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like for OpenAI or for Sam Altman, the only thing that's an exponential increase for him is AGI. Do you think I'm wrong in that? I'm not saying that it's possible. I'm just saying I don't think he sees anything other than that. The way that he seems to talk about those improvements, he's very, very AGI.
It's literally part of the religion. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. Get your drinks ready, people. It's Tescrial.
Drink.
It's their belief that they are the superhumans making the superhuman machine. It's all ridiculous. It's BS. It's BSD. It's meaningless. But they're going to keep saying that, and they're going to set their own standard for what it is. Ooh. They're going to get to a point and say, "See, we have it now." And Gary Marcus tried to get Musk to agree to a long bet. Because Musk said we're going to have AGI by 2029. And Gary Marcus said, okay, then let's do a bet. But bets require standards to determine who wins. So Marcus came up with a bunch of things we've talked about in the show before. Like it can read and understand a novel, and it can do do error-free code and other things. But
humans don't do error-free code.
I know. Well, that's part of the question, is that they think that the goal is to match humanity. Why would you make a machine limited to our weird abilities?
Yeah, we talked about this on Tuesday.
I want my AI to have generalized anxiety disorder, ideally, and depression. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I need it to have ADHD like me. Like, what? I don't think we want it to be human. And also we need to eat to stay alive. I need my AI to have to use the restroom every once in a while because it's got a renal system.
Finally, an AI that can poop.
Yeah. Can you imagine AI poop? Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what it's happening. It's not,
maybe that's what's happening.
I was going to say, it's not that it's hallucinating, it's that it's pooping. We've gotten it wrong this whole time.
Well, no, ChatGPT-5 is going to have diarrhea. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's true. It's like finally, now we've got this critical function on the way to intelligence. The ability
Have you ever noticed that, though, in a game and in a movie and in a television show? Most of the time, no one's ever taking restroom breaks, and I just find that unrealistic. So maybe I do. Maybe I'm going to, you know what? ChatGPT lets you have custom rules, and maybe I will add to the custom rules every once in a while. I need you to take a bathroom break for me. And just let me know that you're taking care of business.
That's actually a really good bit, is every once in a while you submit a prompt and it's like, sorry I'm taking a crap right now.
Yeah.
I gotta come back in a little bit. It's like, sorry, it's actually going to be a bit longer. I started playing the crossword.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, how did you know what I do?
Somebody fed me beans last night, says the ChatGPT.
I feel called out. Let's let's move on to, well, actually, it's continuing to talk about OpenAI, but I wanted to mention, speaking of crap, there's a lot of spam in the
surprise
in the OpenAI store. So, and stores, I don't even know if it's the right word technically, but OpenAI, of course, not too terribly long ago, announced a feature, an option for its platform that when you were using ChatGPT, instead of dealing with plugins, you could use custom GPTs and then you could publish them. So this is where Leo, if he was doing this story, would excitedly tell you about the GPT that he created for what language?
Emacs?
Yes, Emacs. Thank you. So yes,
you said that was such exhaustion.
Listen, I know.
Yeah.
I hear about it every week.
Oh, Lisp. Yeah, Lisp.
Lisp also, yeah.
Is the environment, for Lisp. Okay, so yes. Anyway, that's where he would tell you that. So because I'm here, I get to tell you excitedly about how I trained a custom GPT that I do not share with other people. Thank you. It's not published. For Dungeons and Dragons. I use it as when I'm running a campaign. Sometimes the players do things that are just completely ridiculous, or there's maybe a moment where I want to add a little bit more. And so I will have it, it knows characters that are in this campaign. It knows certain aspects. And so I could say, they're going in this store. Can you give me a really deep and rich description of this store? And really fun stuff. It makes some cool outputs. But
that's a brilliant use for AI.
Thank you. I think it's pretty cool. And so that's an example of what this does. People can train it behind the scenes. So I, for example, uploaded some PDFs of different aspects of the adventure, and then also told it stuff about who my players are, where we were in this campaign, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That happens behind the scenes. Then you get the kind of regular chat and you can talk to it and have it interact. People are able to publish these and make them available to others to use. And TechCrunch's Kyle Wiggers, who wrote about this, talked about the different aspects of how it is being used in some troubling ways. I'm going to mention one of these aspects last because I think that it kind of falls in a gray area, but I'll talk about something like academic dishonesty. So OpenAI explicitly prohibits developers from making, developers, again, loose term here, because you don't have to do any coding to train these. I would not consider myself a developer. I was able to train one. It explicitly prohibits academic dishonesty. GPT Store has several different tools that help remove those common phrases that the anti-plagiarism and anti-AI generation tools that teachers use are looking for. So it helps to, quote unquote, humanize your writing after you've had an AI create your writing. There's also impersonation. There is explicit prohibition against impersonation of people or organizations if you don't have their consent or their legal rights. Yet there are many options for Barack Obama, Elon Musk, and all sorts of other tools. And then there's a jailbreaks section as well, which the idea here is that you can, through different prompt engineering, get the AI to provide responses that it would not otherwise give because it goes against the policy. Now, according to TechCrunch's Kyle Wiggers, it was not, they were not very good at actually getting past circumventing OpenAI's own guardrails or guide rails. But the last one I'll mention is the quote unquote copyright issue. And this is the one where I kind of had a problem with it because somebody, for example, made a little bot that lets you talk to Aang from the Avatar series. That's not Avatar, the blue people, Avatar, the Last Airbender, the far cooler thing. That's going to get emails. Don't email me. Anyway, it lets you talk to Aang from Avatar, the Last Airbender. And again, this is where transformative work versus copyright infringement comes into play. So I didn't care so much about that one. But curious to hear, of course, your thoughts on the rest of it. It sounds like neither of you are exactly surprised. I wasn't surprised to hear about all of this cruft in there. I have not really found... I failed to mention one, and I've had a personal interaction with it. A lot of them try to get you to leave the site and go pay for things elsewhere. So there was there was a sticker tool, which was pretty cool. It would generate, you type it in and it would create a sticker that they had trained it so that it would always have kind of that white border around it.
Is it called the Esposito?
It should be the Esposito tool, but it would automatically generate a link for Sticker Mule. And so then you would click on it and then go buy the stickers at Sticker Mule. And that's not a terrible, that's fine. But yeah, a lot of people are using this to try to make money by getting you to leave the GPT at the end and go do something with whatever it generates. So yes, thoughts on the junk and spam and poop, I guess, that's in the OpenAI store.
I think one of my main exposure to the OpenAI store is when we went through it the other week on the show to delve into the various AI boyfriends and girlfriends, which also are in violation of ChatGPT's rules on this.
It was hilarious.
Like obviously,
episode.
I mean, it was hilarious, but it seems like obviously they're not taking a very strong approach to moderation or enforcing their terms of service.
Yeah, and the problem here is that you get in trouble when you start dealing with humans. Mm-hmm. And
Surprise.
so ChatGPT made this thing that went out there, and people misused it. The lawyer asked the stupid question and did wrong things, but that was his fault, right? Now they're starting to redistribute things that are made by humans, and humans are going to try to get around rules and do stupid things and do bad things, and they have no idea how to deal with this.
Yeah, they're using a mixture.
I don't pay for it, so I can't get into search and I can't see all the stupid stuff, but I'm not surprised it's there.
They're using a mixture of automatic, as you might imagine, automatic filtering
moderation.
Moderation, and human moderation, and reports from its users. Because what is it? It's so common that a platform is created and then all of the onus is put on the individuals who use that platform to actually do the work of making it what it needs to be. I'm sure that the automated part and the reports from the people who use it are the largest part of what decides what gets to stay and what doesn't. But yeah, I don't think I've used really any of them. Well, I'm going to take that back. There is one tool that I have used from the GPTs that are publicly available, not the ones that I've created myself, but they're publicly available that I have used. And that is a tool called Consensus. And Consensus is pretty cool because it is specifically tied to research papers, academic papers. And so there are times where, as is my way, I'm thinking about some strange scientific thing and I get curious about it. And so I will use Consensus to help me find, actual peer-reviewed information about a specific topic. And that actually worked quite well. I'm trying to think, I was getting some more information on the latest studies on erythritol recently, and it was able to point me to the latest research on it as opposed to kind of the ones that end up getting shared across the web that are old or have a lot of interesting funding behind them. So yeah, there was one at least.
A brief aside while we have you here, Mikah, Patrick just posted in the chat a great use for ChatGPT, which is he wrote, create a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition NPC based on Jeff Jarvis. And it did make a player character, actually. I will correct. We've got name, Jeff Jarvis, race, human, class, bard, correct. Background story. Jeff Jarvis is a charismatic and well-traveled bard who has journeyed across the realms seeking knowledge and inspiration. Born into a family of scholars, Jeff inherited a thirst for knowledge and a passion for storytelling.
Keep going.
His travels have taken him to distant lands, ancient ruins, and forgotten libraries in search of tales to weave into his performance. My question for you, Mikah, is what subclass of bard do you think Jeff would be?
Oh, God.
My
You're going
initial
to be able
thing
to
is
insult me, and I
College
won't
of
even
Lore.
know it. I won't even
No,
understand.
I'm not insulting.
that is
I
not
think
an
College
insult.
of Lore is accurate, and
No, that's
it
fair.
is a compliment.
That's absolutely fair because the guy has so many references that he just pulls out of nowhere and is kind of I really appreciate the one aspect of you is that you are kind of like the human version of a bibliography at times. And I don't
You're
know.
very ChatGPT like in that.
I don't know
sense.
many people personally who are that good about it. And I really like that about you. It's almost like
I
you've got
spew
your
footnotes.
You've got your mind palace at the ready and you're just like
do.
sifting through and you're like, yes, this was by Jensen Copeland Gerp et al. Very cool. So yeah, I think College of Lore is appropriate. Absolutely. Also, College of Lore bards are pretty. You should look it up later, Jeff. I think.
So
it'll
is
be
that
pretty-
me with the arrow on the head
Oh no, that's Aang.
from Patrick? Oh, that's Aang. Okay, see, I don't
That's
know any of
Aang.
this stuff.
Sorry, that's
According,
So it doesn't
That's
draw an
an
illustration.
airbender.
It would if you
does the
asked it
character.
to. Here is your appearance according to this. It says, Jeff Jarvis is a middle-aged man with a rugged yet approachable demeanor. He wears a worn traveler's cloak adorned with various patches and trinkets collected from his adventures. His piercing blue eyes and infectious smile draw people to him, making him a natural
I have
leader
bad teeth. I
and
never
entertainer.
smile.
A natural leader and
personality. Jeff is known for his quick wit, sharp intellect, and insatiable curiosity. He's always eager to learn something new and share his knowledge with others. Despite his
Whether you want
scholarly
it or not.
background, Jeff is equally comfortable in the taverns and markets where he entertains crowds with his captivating stories and enchanting music.
Jeff, if you
Let
had
me
to,
tell you about Gutenberg.
if you had to have a musical instrument because that's what a bard does in this as well, what would your musical instrument be? Do you think?
You know it. Craig.
Your voice.
Newmark.
Your voice, oh.
Newmark.
Very
You guys
nice.
are really getting your money worth for that
Yeah,
chorus.
seriously.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. What else do we have here? Oh,
I was trying to explain it to somebody the other day who knows Craig, and they like, what? You do what?
that is probably a difficult thing to understand.
Yeah.
There was a Google, Google?
On this show?
Keyword post the other day, actually yesterday, called The Checkup with Google Health. And this actually...
Is this an alternative for Paris who's losing Dr. Dan, perhaps?
Perhaps it is. Although it uses
I
Gen
believe
AI,
Google.
so maybe you don't
I
wanna do
believe
this.
Google employees use One Medical as well. So
It was actually, believe it or not, thanks to Windows Weekly host Paul Thurrott that I came across this story. So the Windows show was talking about Google, so I thought I'd bring it to the Google show. There's
Windows news today, too, we could get to. There's Microsoft
That's
news,
true.
yes.
Yes, we do need to talk about that, which we should get to pretty soon because then we got to go. I wanted to mention that Google is planning on using Gen AI
Watch out.
in a few ways, including fine-tuning some of its Gemini model for. So, okay, let me be clear. The Gemini model, of course, has some base level understanding of some of what's involved in the medical domain. But what they are doing is they're using sort of specific MedPalm 2, the large language model that is specifically fine-tuned for healthcare, to further fine-tune the Gemini model to help provide kind of people who would be using that tool. As we know, it is in Samsung phones. It very well may likely be coming to Apple's devices in the future. There's reports that Apple is working with Google on bringing Gemini in some way to iPhones. And so with that, there could be something in the works there that they are improving upon the capabilities, understanding and breaking down X-ray images, CT scans, etc. Plus, and I think this is the part that's cool and is maybe not as scary, not necessarily scary, but problematic, is a personal health LLM that uses your Fitbit and a lot of the information that you get from your Fitbit and your Pixel devices to provide some information to you. So if you can imagine, if you've got a Fitbit, if you've got a
Get off your lazy ass, Jarvis.
Yeah, exactly. But it would go, it would go further than that. It would look at your sleep. It would look at your movements. It would look at all of that. And look, I was talking about this on Windows Weekly. My Apple Watch, it doesn't track my sleep. I've got something else for that. My bed tracks my sleep, and my Apple Watch tracks my movement throughout the day. Yes, it's fine. Chuckle it up, folks. My bed keeps me cool at night, and I love it. So,
what bed do you have?
I have the 8 Sleep, which is a previous sponsor on the network. Full disclosure, and yes, it actually. I'm a very, very, very warm sleeper.
Does it make you cool when you sleep?
It's yeah.
How?
So it passes water through these little. It's basically like liquid cooling. It passes water through this grid that's underneath you, and it sends it into an external device that has an exhaust fan on the back, and so it pulls in cold air. From around, okay, this
how
sounds
noisy
so
is it?
It's very quiet, which is the coolest part.
Okay, but how quiet is very quiet when you're sleeping?
Even so,
noise,
it starts working before you go to sleep,
so
and you don't even No, it's not even like you don't hear it. It's very very quiet.
Silent.
I don't know how they do it. It's silent.
I have to sleep with a CPAP pump.
Oh, so you're already at a disadvantage.
Oh, so you're already
Yeah. Sorry, you're already. Look, listen up. We're just you're already smart. But no, with that though, with the CPAP, and you have atrial fibrillation too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this might be especially helpful to you because it can take. That's the point that I was trying to get at. Was I've got all of this data that is being tracked, and my device only ever tells me, maybe anything about an eighth of it. For example, it will tell me something stupid like, hey, this week you walked upstairs less than you did last week. Or, hey, your sleeping breath respiration changed over the past couple of weeks. And maybe that information, when paired with a lot more, actually means something. But on its own, it's not very And so the idea that I could have a personal LLM that's kind of looking at all of it together and making sense of it in some way, I think is pretty cool. And it's not going to be a situation where it's like, hey, Mikah, you know what you should do right now? You should drink water out of the back of the toilet tank because I read some study that says if you do that, you'll never get sick again. No.
Where did that come from in your brain? Jeez.
That I just made up out of the blue. See, there's still
that's
creativity
the dungeon
in
master's.
Yeah.
That's the dungeon master's instinct right there.
There you go.
All those hours, they're building towards that.
Just wait, my dear, dear players, when you are forced with drinking out of the back of a toilet to keep yourselves alive. Anyway, I like this. Go ahead.
No, you weren't finished. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that I would not use it for those weird things. I would like to hear if it says, I've looked at your trends over the past 6 months, and it does look like when you are, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that it could actually, when you spend more time at home in a given week, instead of going places, then you are more likely to not eat as much, maybe, and your sleep is poorer or something. Just maybe looking at trends I don't see.
I think this effort to turn us into a data set to find anomalies, fine, but I don't think there's a lot of use in it. How did I find my thyroid cancer? Because I had a lump. How did I find my prostate cancer? Because my blood test said, oh, that's not good. How did I find my AFib? Because I said, oh, this is weird. I had another condition. This is old. This is what happens when you get old. You talk about all your conditions. This was inevitable on the show. I had a weird thing with a vein here. Okay. So I went to 4 different doctors, and it was all the blind man and the elephant shtick. Because the pulmonary person wanted to see what pulmonary, the endocrinologist wanted to see what was endocrinology, the other one, and finally it was a set thing, and all the symptoms pointed to that. My point being, at some point, what you want to be able to do, but better your doctor does it than you do, is that you can feed all of the symptoms and all of the questions of something into it, and it will suggest things to the doctor that the doctor, being the blind man and the elephant, thinking only about her own specialty, wouldn't have otherwise thought of. That's where I see a use for this kind of technology. But basically, we're tracking you constantly is probably going to just make you nuts.
I understand that. There's actually there was a few research. There were a few studies about specifically that concern, especially when it came to sleep, that people were getting poorer sleep because of all of the sleep tracking they were doing. But on the flip side, what if I didn't have to wait until I felt a lump in my thyroid to know that something was developing?
But probably
there?
blood tests are going to tell you that. And the person who was going to give you that is now in jail for a long time. What's her name?
Oh, I was like, my doctor's in jail?
Elizabeth
Dr. Dan's in jail?
No, not Dr. Dan. That's
Dr.
why he's going
Dan.
out of state. The penitentiary's in New Jersey.
But see, a lot of times I imagine, Jeff, you have a couple, well, not just a couple. You've got several things on your side here. One, you're white. Two, you're a man. And three, and I mean this in the most loving way I possibly can, because of your age, you are more likely to have some of these conditions, and therefore they're more likely to believe that you would have some of these conditions. I have a family member who is Black, who is young, who is a woman, and who has who's also a very soft-spoken person, and who, because she is a mother, does not have a whole lot of time to do a lot of her own research that would be required for her to be able to advocate for herself to the level that is sometimes needed to even get the blood test in the first place.
Yes.
And that is where I see this in the same scope. My partner has had a hell of a time working through at different times trying to get tests that ended up being necessary. And, I'm on the flip side of that in some ways. Obviously, I've got a few things to play against me, but boy, howdy, you do not want to come up against me when it comes to making sure I've got all of my receipts and research done, because I do. And am, frankly, like if there's one bit of patting on my back I'll give myself, it's that I'm very good at advocating for myself in a health environment. And so my doctor and I have a good relationship where I can literally message and say, I would like to get this test done. Here are the reasons why, and it's easy to do. But I feel for the people who, don't have that, and I think that that's.
But you raised this yesterday, Mikah, or the other day with nVidia. The problem, as you said the other day, is the data for you as a Black man that would feed these machines is inadequate.
Yes,
and we know that.
Yeah,
and that's got to get fixed.
That's true
in this process before you're going to have enough faith in it.
Exactly. Yep.
Right? Before it becomes an
agent.
agent.
I also think a larger issue, which I agree on both the points, that I think having this data can be really helpful for people who are not in a position to advocate for themselves or be heard by people in the medical establishment. But I think also, last week on the show, we talked about how data from internet-connected cars is ending up in the hands of LexisNexis, which is resulting in higher car insurance premiums for people who didn't opt in for that. I fear that if our medical data ends up connected all in once to form our own large language models related to our own health, that information will somehow get back to insurance companies and ultimately result in, nightmare Black Mirror situations where it's like, oh, you've been having bad nights of sleep for the last couple of months, your health insurance is going up.
Right. Which comes down to not technology, but law.
Yeah.
But again, as I think I said last week, but the problem is the government will want to maintain that data for themselves because they're not our friend when it comes to privacy. And so whom do we trust to create the guardrails against the human behavior of these companies?
I don't know who.
I have no answers.
Paris.
I trust no one.
Yeah.
Trust no one.
Dr. Dan?
That's Paris's
Dr.
nihilism.
Dan. Dr. Dan could be in charge of the medical establishment. Hopefully power won't go to his head.
All right. We will pause to breathe in and breathe out. And we are back with This Week in Google, or some such, the show where we talk about some such, including apparently AIs taking big old dumps. Thank you for joining us here on the show featuring Jeff Jarvis, Paris Martineau, and yours truly, Mikah Sargent.
We redefined the digital dump today. Yes.
Oh, Lord have mercy. what else
Yeah,
exists?
Leo goes away, and what do? You make the show about,
scatological information.
Right.
That's what
Yes.
we'll go with. Jeff,
That's what we did.
Let's pull from your section.
Oh, okay. I think the inflection story is really interesting.
Yes, that's right. Yes. So tell us about the Inflection and Microsoft story.
So Inflection is a company that was backed by a bunch of people, including Microsoft and Reid Hoffman, and it started the chat called Pi, which is supposed to be more human and more empathetic and more interesting. And what's his name? Mustafa Suleyman, right? Founder of DeepMind, was the head of, I forget the name of it, Inflection. And then today came out an announcement where what I saw was Inflection announcing they had a new CEO because the CEO was going to Microsoft. And as you looked at all the stories, what turned out to be is that, and you can read about this at the information, or you can ask your favorite chat GPT to steal it for you.
Oh, snap. Them's just fighting words.
The lines are drawn.
Ooh. So what happened is that Microsoft, as you remember, wanted to have a new AI division. And it was going to be Sam Altman in the 1 hour when he wasn't the CEO of OpenAI. And then he was back at OpenAI, and we didn't hear anything about that. But Microsoft was figuring out it needed an AI division to make sure they hedged their bets with OpenAI. So they managed to hire much of the staff, almost all the staff of Inflection, starting with Suleyman. So they now have a head of Microsoft AI. What happens to Inflection, you might ask? Well, it pivots to something else with a smaller staff, with a new CEO who used to be the head of R&D at Mozilla. And Reid Hoffman wrote about this, tweeted about this, and he was obviously the puppeteer behind this deal. And the deal's really kind of amazing because the Reid at Greylock and Microsoft and the investors in Inflection are being made whole, apparently, by licensing deals to Microsoft. Rather than a purchase, it appears from what the information tells me, but here I am stealing the information and sharing it with you for free, because that's the kind of bastard I am. So
We love
the
you,
information informs me. Actually, I'm plugging the information right now. I'm doing exactly what Google does. I'm saying, go buy an information subscription. It's where I found the best information. So they're going to make the investors whole, but the investors also keep their same equity in Inflection. And if Inflection grows or sells or does other things, they will benefit again. Meanwhile, Microsoft gets the best possible people they can for Microsoft AI, and Suleyman gets a great job. It's a pretty weird, amazing deal that occurred here. So it just kind of came out very quietly, and I found it fascinating.
I'll be honest, I did kind of lose the thread there between the veiled attacks. Paris?
I mean, it seems like what has happened is Microsoft hollowed out Inflection because it got most of their senior staff. At the same time, Microsoft is doing a licensing deal. Here, I'll read from the story. At the same time it revealed the staff departures, Inflection disclosed a licensing deal with Microsoft to make its models available for sale on Microsoft's Azure, and said other cloud platforms would follow. Inflection has also told investors they will fully recoup their investment and more as a result of the licensing agreement. It's unclear whether the size of the payout, what the size of the payout will be, and whether it will come in a lump sum or over time. In addition to the payout, investors will keep their equity in Inflection, ensuring that they can profit if Inflection is bought or goes public, which is a really interesting setup where it's like Microsoft gets all the good stuff of Inflection and investors recoup their investment but still hold equity in the skeleton of Inflection in case something comes of that.
With a new CEO who people respect.
Yeah.
And then it pivots. I think it basically becomes that job title I was making fun of before. I think it becomes the LMOPS, whatever.
Yeah.
Where it becomes a kind of product integrator person thing for LLMs.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that's
think
what it sounds like.
something that is interesting. Yeah. Jeff, how do you feel about the kind of consolidation we're seeing in the AI industry?
That comes back to the kind of clutch moment I had watching nVidia, where if big remains everything in AI, then that kind of, you have to have the most data, the most power, the best brains, the most money, then AI becomes the province once again. If you're talking, I think before, where Paris, with respect, your reflex to trouble was let's regulate. Not necessarily my first response, but
enemy of regulation, Jeff Jarvis would have some other thoughts.
I want smart regulation. I just don't want dumb regulation.
I want smart regulation that incorporates the opinions of the companies being regulated.
Well, that's an issue. And so what's going to happen here, I think, is that the lesson we should learn in any case is if we let things get consolidated in a few bigs, we're a problem. Now, this is where I think the fact that Meta started the track going of open sourcing Llama, and Gemini open source, and Europe didn't forbid open sourcing, which would have been really awful. So the question is, how can we? And there's what's the French one? Mistral, which is fairly open source. How can we put resources behind all of that? And if the administration believes they're going to throw money behind things, they just put $8 billion into an Intel chip fab. Maybe they should be investing in smaller, competitive, open source AI work in universities and institutions, which again is happening in Norway. Why can't we be Norway? That's my.
I don't know if you saw my colleagues at The Information posted a story, I guess, right as we jumped on to record this, that Cohere, the OpenAI competitor, apparently they were generating about $13 million in annualized revenue at the end of last year, which means that they, in 1 month at the end of last year, generated only about $1 million in revenue, which seems very small to me. It seems like many of the companies in this sector are still incredibly immature.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I still don't understand how OpenAI gets the revenue it gets, because how it's really used. It's not really, really, really useful as a model. I don't think it's a toy still, unless we talk. This is where Leo has to set me straight.
Leo's like Lisp. Yeah.
I honestly.
Do you pay for ChatGPT to run your Dungeon Master?
I do, actually. Yeah. So I paid for it in the first place because I wanted to, whenever it first started adding new stuff, we were talking about it a lot. I wanted to show the new features that it has. Now it's kind of mostly familiar with everybody, but I do get value out of it outside of just the Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Especially when it comes to creating new automations and things that I do.
Wait, do you disclose this to your fellow players?
Yes.
Okay.
That
would you consider that to be an ethical requirement to do so?
I don't know. I think if I was playing online in front of like an audience, that would be necessary probably. I don't know.
Yeah, I think if you were playing in front of an audience, maybe. But I also think a lot of people use modules for D&D, which for those who I guess don't know, modules are kind of like a pre-written campaign structure. It's a book that could have everything you want to know about a particular world or an adventure, and you kind of base your game around that. And this is similar. I mean, what is it drawing from your ChatGPT?
Mine actually is drawing partially from modules, as well as information.
Did you pay other people for them?
Yeah, you have to buy them. It's from.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's from
Wizards of the Coast.
It's from Wizards of the Coast
listening,
specifically. Yeah.
Don't turn off.
You have to. Well, you got. Yeah, that's where the adventure came from. So that is owned by Wizards of the Coast, or that's where I've purchased that from. And then parts of that also have come from individual creators, when I've added different things to the story. And then of course there's stuff that I've added myself and that's the hardest part, because if it's something that I've created myself, like this is maybe a long, goes into the weeds, but essentially there was a part of the campaign where my players needed to learn how to use griffins to fly from one place to another. And so on the spot, I just came up with this whole set of instructions that this sort of grouchy person was teaching them how to do. And so I'm writing it down in the moment as I'm inventing what the rules are for learning how to fly and train griffins. And I needed that to end up into it. So having to kind of take all of that and summarize it and put it together and make it so that the thing new is a lot harder than just taking the PDF that you've purchased, the 2-page PDF about a specific location that you purchased and just uploading that into the system. So,
that's so interesting.
When it comes to, I think if I ever, so I do play in a campaign that is made available to the public. It's part of the Incomparable Network, which is a friend of the network, Jason Snell's network. And he has a podcast series called Total Party Kill. And there are many different adventures. And I think that if I was the dungeon master on there and I was using ChatGPT, that probably would be something I would disclose in that case, just again, because it's public facing. But yeah, I don't know that it's necessary in private per se.
I mean, I think also, I don't even know that it would be, because I listen to a lot of popular like actual play podcasts and whatnot. For instance, when I listen to his Not Another D&D podcast, and often the DM on that will go into kind of in their after show, oh yeah, I kind of based this monster off of something from Kobold Press, which is a third party.
Yeah.
I mean, all of
we're not required at the beginning
curbing off of other things.
You're absolutely right. And there's no set of rules where at the very beginning of any new thing we go, I purchased this from, it's a little bit like robots.txt. So I worked to raise money for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital with the Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And as part of that, it was a live stream where they would make donations, and depending on the size of their donation, they could impact the game in a certain way. So you could pay.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun because people would pay an amount of money to like bring a monster into the campaign or bring an adventurer to join my players. And I chose to, but was not required to, start out by saying, by the way, this epic level adventure is from this person. You can buy it here. And, I've adapted it as such. And then I also did one that wasn't a money-raising venture, and it was how the Lich Stole Christmas. But I didn't want it to be Christmas because I had one player who was Jewish and was a practicing Jew, and I did not want them to feel like out. And so I completely changed the name, How the Lich Stole Mirthmas, but I also made it clear this comes from this adventure, and we took it and adapted it. There's a lot of adaptation that goes on, and I think there's a lot of just general, it's all good. And really, it's only ever been since Hasbro came into it that things have gotten particularly messy. And you may have seen, I don't know, Jeff, if you have any attention in this space, but you may have seen, and maybe Paris, you did see, when Hasbro did try to change
when they tried to change the creative, kind of their version of Creative Commons licensing.
And
specifically, what is interesting here is like D&D, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just kind of riffing off what I remember from whenever this was, D&D has always had some sort of licensing structure. The thing I had mentioned earlier about like a DM of a popular show saying, oh, I got this monster from something called Kobold Press. That's a third-party company that exists to make, like, let's say monsters or NPCs or campaign modules that fit into the world of Dungeons and Dragons, a system owned by a company called Wizards of the Coast, which is now owned by Hasbro. And they're able to do that because of a specific kind of licensing structure that says like, hey, you can create content in our universe using our rules and whatnot. That's totally fine. But they tried, the community was in an uproar sometime last year, I believe, because they tried to change it essentially to get larger companies that have popped up where their whole business model now is creating content in these worlds using these rules and saying if you make over, I think, some X amount of millions of dollars, you have to pay licensing fees. And people were up in arms. I mean, it's kind of a similar issue in regards to copyright that we talk about in the show all the time with tech products.
And the thing is, very quickly, it becomes, I would argue, a fair use what is the exact term? It's not alteration, right? It's or is it alteration? What is the verb?
Transformative.
Transformative.
You want a transformative use.
Yeah, it very quickly becomes transformative use the moment that any one of your players does anything, because that is not at all written into, what the adventure provides. And so, and you have to react to that. That's the cool
so they become a co-creator then. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's,
which is something we don't account for enough in a world where we can collaborate far more than we ever could before.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And something I think that is interesting, because someone in the chat while we were talking about this posted like, "Oh, I'm surprised D&D is still even a thing anymore." D&D is a huge business. One of I think, as Patrick rightfully pointed out, the top creator on Twit for the last many years is this company Critical Role that makes tens of millions of dollars every year just by running live stream D&D campaigns on a weekly basis.
Twit or Twitch?
On Twitch. Not Twitch.
I was going to say, if Leo was making millions of dollars to that, he'd be fine. He'd stop pushing for the club.
Similar but different.
Yeah.
Speaking of, let's take a quick break. Twit.tv/clubtwit. $7 a month, $84 a year. Consider joining the club. When you do, you help support what we do here on the network. You help us keep talking about AI doing weird things and Dungeons and Dragons and watch Jex Javros and Paris Martineau fight each other over copyright and fair use and everything in between. No, not you. Jex Javros fights. It is discourse. So join the club. You'll gain access to a bunch of awesome benefits. Twit.tv/clubtwit has all of the information for you. I won't go into it right now, but there's lots of great stuff, including every single show ad-free. It's just the content. $7 a month, $84 a year at twit.tv/clubtwit. I think we're nearing the end of this episode of Twig, so I want to ask both of you if there is any other story that you absolutely want to make sure we get to before we go to the picks of the week. If not, I'm going to pick by random. One? Yeah, let's go silly.
You go.
All right. Listeners of the show may remember some months ago in which I introduced Jeff, Leo, and others to the word Rizzed by showing them the video. I don't know if you've seen Mikah, Livvy just rizzed up baby Gronk. And from the mind that brought you that video, we've got an important update on line 83, which is baby Gronk just got revenge on Livvy.
What?
As they say.
I don't know what any of this means. Is this more crypto?
No, strangely, it is not. This is sports. But we have to play the video from the beginning. Just in the first, I don't know, I think it's 20 seconds with sound, ideally.
So,
well,
here we go.
Baby Gronk just got revenge on Livvy. Livvy has been cheating on baby Gronk with Paul Skeens. She's even been watching his baseball games.
Confusion is the right response.
Gronk
is baby
decided to rizz up the
Gronk
Drip
old
King's
enough?
ex-girlfriend, Sydney Smith, to make Livvy jealous. Baby Gronk took Sydney out to dinner. He even hugged her. Is baby Gronk
even hugged her?
of the year?
He even hugged her. He could be the Rizzler of the year,
He hugged her. He could be the Rizzler of the year, Jeff. Did you hear that? The Rizzler of the year.
Of the year. The point of this, there is no point. It's simply that this man says words like they mean something, and they don't. But
you have to respect that a little bit, don't you? When you say something with enough glooption, you just believe that it's real, and you just move on.
And you really do. You look at him and you're like, did baby Gronk get revenge on Livvy? Is he the next Rizzler?
He might be the Rizzler of the year, even. Oh, wow.
It's a great question.
So there is clarification to be done here. The most important clarification that I have is baby Gronk old enough to be dating Lizzo? No,
I don't think there's any dating going on. If I recall correctly, the first video, he said with the same disturbingly strange affect, Baby Gronk just rived up Livvy. And Baby Gronk is a child football star, well known on TikTok. Livvy is maybe a college cheerleader of some sort. What really happened is Baby Gronk and Livvy met and had a brief side hug that was captured on some sort of video. But this man's job is to kind of do sports entertainment news about things that clearly don't matter. So he created this incredible story. I think part of it is just the absolute absurdity of a video that begins earnestly with Baby Gronk just rizzed up Livvy.
Yes, and
in a similar sense to this.
What's
it makes
arguably
no sense,
even more absurd is that I genuinely thought it was a cryptocurrency moment. I think that speaks to the level of absurdity that tech embodies.
I like that we began and ended the show with Paris's linguistic explorations.
That is what it is. You're right.
These are the things that haunt me.
Yes.
I have a specific section of my Twitter bookmarks that are just things that haunt me that I could talk about in this show. I appreciate you guys for joining me on this.
The things that will haunt us as well. And, I think, why don't you talk about what you're on there right now, Mr. Jarvis? Some booing, and we'll end
number
on
74. Yeah, this is a cultural moment at South by Southwest, which itself was obnoxious. They think that California is more obnoxious because they booed any references to technology in the sizzle reel that South by Southwest put up. It's not great video, but you'll hear that at any mention of technology or AI, the Texas crowd, the South by Southwest techie, formerly the techie crowd, now cooler than techies, booed Silicon Valley.
Digital culture makers, and I think if you look out into this room, you can tell that AI is a culture. Artificial intelligence is.
This is very funny coming from a conference that is funded by the biggest defense contractors.
Exactly.
Be one of those people that leverages AI. Don't be run over by it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's pretty great. I love that AI, boo, AI, boo. That would have been troublesome during the NVIDIA conference if there was a AI came up. Jeez Louise. All right. Believe it or not, we're going to do one more breath before we head to the picks at the end of the show.
Air cool your chips, everybody.
Exactly. All right, it's time for the picks, stuff, and things of the week. Paris Martineau, what is your thing of the week?
My thing of the week, you're the only person who would have any possibility of understanding this. Mikah, have you watched anime at all, and do you know what I'm saying when I say Neon Genesis Evangelion?
So I will say that I have watched some anime, and I have several friends who really like Evangelion. I do not know what the Neon Genesis part of that means. So
Evangelion is a shorthand for Neon Genesis Evangelion.
I'm learning.
But yes, the same thing. I have not watched anime since I was a child. I used to be really into it. Had no real interest in getting back started. This might be my only foray, really. But I've had some friends mention this series to me time and time again. It's a series that originally aired, I believe, in the 90s or something like that. They describe it as the best anime of all time, if not one of the best television series of all time. And I had kind of heard that and rolled my eyes a bit, but I was like, oh, whatever. The episodes are 20 minutes. It's on Netflix. I'll give it a watch. It is genuinely phenomenal. It's a deconstruction of this trailer I included is not going to make sense, but it's beautiful. It was moving. It's a deconstruction of the mecha genre. Even if you have no idea what's up with anime, I'd highly recommend it. And it ended up becoming very timely because the series is, it's maybe about 20 some episodes. It is well known for having one of the strangest, most artistic postmodern absurdist endings in anime ever.
It's only 20
it felt like
episodes?
I was back. Yeah, it's
I
like
had no idea.
26 or something
I can
like
watch
that. And they're
that
all
easily.
You can definitely watch it. All the episodes are like 25 minutes long.
The way people talk
It's
about
really
it seems
easy.
like it's this huge epic story.
That's what I thought as well. But it's a real treat. And it ended up being a great time for me to watch it because just this week, I finished this series on Saturday by accident. And it turns out on Sunday and today on Wednesday, the studio was releasing, there was like a movie made as kind of a coda to the series, and it was being shown. It's maybe been like at least a decade or two since the movie first came out, but they re-released it in American theaters for the first time ever on Sunday and Wednesday. So I went to the theaters in Manhattan and saw the End of Evangelion, and it was a delight.
Nice. I'm
Yeah,
told.
so just like that show is actually, it's up there with like Miyazaki. It's kind of transcended anime already. It's like its own,
Yeah, I would hesitate to call it anime. I mean, the first maybe like 5 episodes of it it's more just kind of like getting you used to the concept. At first, I was like, this seems like a pretty normal anime. You got like a kid inside a giant robot, end of the world, whatever. It goes places. I'd put it up there with some of my favorite absurdist nihilist 1970s films.
Well, with that kind of blurb, absurdist nihilism.
I was not expecting it to be as interesting artistically as it was, but
Well, I'll have to watch it then, knowing that it's
on Netflix. So check it out.
It's not a huge commitment because, that's the thing is, with some of them, I don't have the time to get so deep into all of the lore.
Yeah, like
that's involved.
Naruto.
And,
that's hundreds of episodes.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that. Exactly. But we do have time for Jeff's stuff.
So, you all make fun of me, but I'll have you know I'm a New York Times trend story that people are not going to get rid of their phones, even though I didn't know AT&T is talking about eliminating them in California. Eliminating. And after an AT&T outage,
landlines?
eliminating
They're going
landlines
to come
after
to your
AT&T
houses
outage,
and they're going to take them away from you.
So, and your guns at the same time.
Okay, don't say that. That's going to freak people out.
You've heard it here first, guys.
Jeff Jarvis says they're coming
And
for
your birth
guns.
control. It's all going. Your landline phone and your pills. So
First, they came for the landlines, and I did nothing.
So I didn't know this stat from the story. 73% of American adults lived in a household in 2022 with no landline, but at least one cell phone. That actually surprised me. It's gone that far. My cohort has died off. Nearly 90% of Americans aged 25 to 29 reported that they used only cell phones, compared to less than half of Americans over 65. So they're taking away grandma's phone.
Wait, do you actually make calls on that landline?
No, here's the weird thing about it.
Okay, here you are talking this big game. When is the last time you picked up a call from that phone, Jeff?
Oh, pick up? Never. Because,
all spam.
when our son who lives in New Hampshire calls, he calls the landline. Because we can put that on speaker and my wife and her phone might be here. I might be there. This thing, Paris, there's this amazing thing here. You won't believe this. It really will blow your mind. They call them extension phones. The same phone number rings in multiple rooms. It's quite amazing.
Wow.
And so we can pick one up wherever we are and we can talk to our son, right? So that's fine. So we use it for that. No, all the calls are spam calls, every single call. And my wife will yell at me and say, don't answer that one. I said, no, this one could be a real. No, it's always. My trick with them is I always pick up the phone and then I say nothing for 10 seconds.
See, that doesn't do it because they're noting that you answered the phone and that it's an active line, so they're going to call you again.
Yeah. They're going to convince me that grandchild is in Niagara Falls.
You should pick it up and then give that person on the other line all those gift cards they've been asking for. It's really necessary.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I do is if I do say something, I say something with a very gruff Jeff voice. Hello. And then sometimes it's actually somebody who's wanting to call and I sound like I'm a rude asshole. So that's the other problem with it. But no, we're not. So
this is your case for landlines?
It's just we just got it. Inertia, man. Inertia. We had, until not many years ago, we had 2 lines, one full time for the fax machine.
Wow.
I think landlines are just being propped up by the home alarm industry at this point, because they all still require landlines.
No, they don't all. We had somebody out and they don't use that anymore. They use the ADT. Google uses cell.
I think a large part of it is just regulation. Because I remember just the other day not the other day, but a couple of episodes of Ask the Tech Guys ago, someone wrote in and was talking about how AT&T was holding a conference about trying to get rid of landlines, but it was required by the FCC that a corporation in a place where there's no other way of calling 911, if you're the only body that can be used to call 911, in order to leave that area, you have to hold like a series of public conferences and whatnot, and to say we're leaving, we want to leave, and then it also has to be agreed upon that they can leave. Otherwise, you have to stay. So I know that that's a big part of it, is overcoming that regulatory hurdle. It seems from the FCC that is saying, look, sorry, but you're the only one here who's giving these people the ability to call emergency services, so you kind of got to stay here. But you are keeping it alive yourself.
This is not a copper line anymore. Obviously, this is going to our fiber. AT&T said the number of copper landlines, known as POTS, fell by 89% from 2000 to 2021. Quote, like Blockbuster Rentals and Kodak Film, POTS has fallen from technological primacy to effective obsolescence in the course of a generation, AT&T wrote in an application to the California PUC. My 97-year-old departed father, we got him a cell phone, but oh my God, he couldn't hear on it. He couldn't work on it. We had to get one of those old folks phones that did the text for you and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, what's that? TT something?
Nah, it's kind of like that. It's a little different, but yeah.
Got it.
In Florida, there's so many old people in Florida, they give them away for free.
Wow. That's
Wow.
where all the Florida tax dollars are going. Not to gator cleanup. Or wait, do they have Crocs there?
No, I let those, roam free.
What else in your stuff pile, Jeff?
No, that's enough.
That's enough? Okay, he's had enough. My pick, we've got things, stuff, and pick. My pick is a little app that I just came across called Minders. And I thought it was interesting because it was first and foremost designed as a Mac app with the kind of iPhone app secondarily. And it kind of works how my brain works, which is that throughout the day, I have thoughts and I look at different sites and I see different products and I do different things. And the way that I kind of keep hold and keep track of all of this is that I just have a text message conversation with myself. And so I just send things to that text message conversation. But it's not incredibly searchable. It's not great for kind of scrolling back and seeing different things. And somebody created this little tool that works almost like a private social media. It's just you. And what I liked about this idea...
You finally get the answers you want.
Yes. What I liked about this idea...
Only good posts.
Is that I have almost exclusively, or almost entirely, not exclusively, almost entirely stopped posting anything other than the occasional link to something that I'm doing or what have you, because what would happen every time is I would think about posting something, and then the 5 to 10 expected responses that I would get would fly through my head. And so then I'd start rewriting the message so that it had all of the proper hedging in place. And then I'd think about the next set of messages that I would send to make sure that I was covering all of my bases for all of the ways that it could be misinterpreted or, changed or what have you, or the questions that might be asked. And by the time I was done with that, I'd say I'm exhausted and I don't want to post it. But I thought, what if I could just send those little funny moments I have into this little feed and I could just have them there? And occasionally I could scroll back and go, oh yeah, on that day I was thinking about how there may be good bacteria in the back of a toilet tank. What a bizarre idea. And then I'll think about...
What is it with you in the toilet tank?
And then I'll just think about this great conversation as part of that. So yeah, this is like a little social media for yourself that you can post photos, and it's got like link cards as well. And you can set up different streams. So maybe you have, like for Paris, you have the things that haunt you could go there in one stream. And then you could have all of your thoughts about who's going to replace Dr. Dan, I guess. And anyway, I thought this was a pretty cool little app called Minders. And what's great about it as well is that it is very privacy minded. Minders is. It's all iCloud syncing. So yeah, you might check out that app, available for free in the App Store. Folks, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of This Week in Google. We had a lot to talk about today, and we only got to about half of it. So, no, I kid. It was a great conversation with you both. Thanks for having me here with you.
Good job, Mikah.
Thank you so much. And Paris, if folks want to keep up with what you're doing and want to follow along, where should they go online? And do you have anything you'd like to plug?
You can follow me on Twitter at Paris Martineau, on Blue Sky at paris.nyc, or reach out to me on Signal with interesting tips about companies at Martineau01.
And of course, Jeff Jarvis, what about you? Where should folks head?
Gutenberg.com, where there are discount codes still for my 2 books, Out Now Magazine and Gutenberg parenthesis. And thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you both. You can find me online at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or the best thing to do is head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. If you would like to, if you're listening to this episode and you're not subscribed, you can subscribe to Twig and also find the show notes, all of those beautiful links, over at twit.tv/TWIG, I guess. That's a long one in comparison to what I'm used to. TWIG, twit.tv/twig, will get you to the show page where you can subscribe to audio or video formats. This show records live every Wednesday, around about 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, 2100 UTC. If I'm hosting the show, if Leo's hosting it, it's sometime after 2 p.m. Pacific. Don't tell him I said that. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you, or they will see you, for another episode of Twig next week. Bye-bye.